Good morning, everyone. Just been having some trouble, audio trouble, and camera trouble. I've actually relocated to a different room, so I'm not in the same place. So because this is my work environment, so I've basically sort of shifted completely. That's why I've got a background because this is a semi-storage area as well. So half of it's storage and half of it, that's why I put the background on. So it's pretty much, yeah, it's yes, it is the g'day Loki, it is the Serpanos show is on, yes. Disorganized and deranged and all over the place. I'm actually wearing because I'm working from home currently, I've got my actual glasses that I usually wear. So I've got another pair at work. This is a replacement for my daytime glasses. The other one's only knocked it about 50% down. This actually knocks it down by 70%. So I've replaced my old daylight glasses. So I still get blue coming through. But it's only about 25%, which is more like similar to the natural background that you would get outside. You don't get this excessive amount like you get from screens in the daytime, and also in the office environment. Oh, it's just terrible. You've got all these fluorescent lights, and it's just blue on blue like mad. So this is what I use. So when I go back to work, I'll take these to work and use them there. When I'm working from home, I'll keep them at home and I'll use them here. Since I've got them here, I might as well use them because I don't like the other ones. The other ones are really those small ones. They don't sit well on my face, and they're a bit of a hassle to basically deal with them. So now you know why. There's the other ones, the night ones. So they're there to be used at night when I have to use them. So anyway, let's get on with it, since it's been a while, I know. So I've had a lot of things happening in life. Mira's had a few health issues, and Dad's had some health issues, especially recently with his accident. It's just never ending. State of affairs with my family, and even my sister's side, they've had a few things, and they've been asking me for advice and all that. So a lot of family's been taxing my time. And as I've always said, I do this voluntarily. The channel, yes, it's important to me in a sense because I've put a lot of time in it to build it up to this level. But at the same time, family always comes first when it comes to these sort of issues. So yeah, it's been a bit of I think it's a month now that I haven't actually done anything, because Dad had the accident on the 2nd of the last month, so it's about a month since he had it. And I'm just astounded that he survived. He didn't have any broken bones. Like that part there supposedly was fractured. It was basically the arthritic, when you get knocked around, your ligaments are pulled and all that. Some of those are arthritic particles that actually build up around your joints. They actually came loose, and they misdiagnosed him. But I was shocked because he's 88 and a half. I was shocked how quickly, after only 6 days, when they took the plaster off, the arm, well, this part of the arm had actually shown some level of atrophy. I was absolutely shocked. I went, bloody hell, just noticed I haven't even brushed my hair. Anyway, yes, amateur time. Even it seems like I just come out of bed. Anyway, I don't look too bad, too shabby even when I come out of bed. Yeah, so that's sort of the situation. He's getting better. His mobility is a bit of a problem at the moment still. He got thrown 3 meters when he got hit by the car. And obviously hitting the pavement hard. He ended up with severe bruising all over. he couldn't sleep for about a week and a half from the severe bruising. So I had to get him like a new mattress top to give it like a cushioning thing, and one of those V-like pillows to be able to adjust himself a bit. So it was a bit of a struggle to try and get him to feel comfortable in bed to be able to get some rest, because you need that as well. But as he complained to my brother from another mother, one of them, I've got two, very close friends, they dropped in and actually delivered him some stuff. Yeah, inappropriate. Anyway, he likes his pumpkin bread, and so he got that for free. So yeah, so pretty much he had actually noticed that he's generally much better, but still has those sort of things, those sort of little issues of mobility. So he's lost a bit of his mobility. He struggles a bit walking along a lot of distance where before he didn't. So it definitely has actually left now. It's probably just those ligaments have been stretched, because there's nothing broken. They even did an MRI around his neck, nothing broken. So, no pain anywhere. It's just really that he's been probably, had some probably minor ligament tears and stuff like that. And that's probably causing him some issues currently. And at 88 and a half, it takes a bit longer to heal. So I've just said to Dad, just be patient. And I've just had him eating more meat. And as I was going to just say, and I nearly forgot, when my brother from another mother actually dropped off the pumpkin bread, he complained, God, Harry's feeding me so much protein. Because pretty much, because I've been, cooking, I've been doing a lot of the domestics and stuff like that. So I've been going over there, and pretty much before I leave, I've always got his breakfast sorted. So it's in the fridge. He just has to take it out and eat it. At night, he has yogurt, so that's a no-brainer. He can do that himself. And I just cook his lunch and usually have lunch with him. And it's just basically steak and eggs. So, well, it's varied stuff. It's not just steak and eggs. We had pork belly one day, really thick pork belly. He loved that. So we'll definitely do that again. So a few other things. So probably do some squid next week. I couldn't find any octopus, so probably they'll take a miss until later on when they have some in. So a few things like that. So we're doing a bit of seafood, pork, beef, lamb, stuff like that. So a bit of chicken here and there. So it's sort of varied all over the place. So to give a bit of variety and all that, so he doesn't complain as much. But no, he's doing much better. And considering that I thought he was a goner, a write-off, so to speak, after the ambos called me, because he wouldn't go to the hospital. He said, I'm fine. And they wanted to take him, because you never know, you may have internal hemorrhage, you may have all sorts of things. And I had to go leave work and jog, in a frantic manner. I was in another frame of mind completely. Get there and actually convince him to go to the hospital to get himself tested. So yeah, fuck. That was interesting, to say the least. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. Yeah, it's at least he's got some of his mobility back. He's sort of being able more to look after himself a bit more. Still got a few things. As I said, the mobility issue is a big one. So hopefully that will sort itself out in the next couple of months. Currently, I'm off carer's leave. I'm back working from home, so permanently. So I'll be doing that. And yeah, so that's how I'm traveling at the moment. And so yeah, it is, with all the working, caring, and all that. You can understand it's exhausting. So I'm a bit exhausted. I'm stressed. I've got my own issues in that regard. But anyway, other people have priorities at the moment. How it goes. Richard, how are you, mate? Good to have you here. Thanks for showing up. And thanks for everybody else for showing up, because without you guys, there's no program. There's not much of a live stream then. Tracy, always a pleasure. Oops. Ormond, yes, to you as well. Good morning. Early question. Good idea. Get them early in. Early versus question. Anyone can access if they like. If you divide your pronouns by the number of vax shots, how many climate changes do you get? One. Great opportunity to do that. Thanks, mate. No bad man, how are you? Bob, always a pleasure, mate. Good to have you here. Paul. Oops. Paul's a local Tasmanian. From HD, in with the questions immediately. How are you, HD? What animals would be interesting for studying for health and longevity applications? You have mentioned pigs for their detox ability. Look, we can't extrapolate much from longevity from animals to us. Let's just be honest about it. We can't. What we can say, we can't even extrapolate from our own research on humans. It tells us nothing. All we know is that humans, from the archaeological evidence, the N15 data, we know that humans, have been primarily super hyper carnivores for the majority of their existence. And primarily, they've used plants as starvation foods, and we've used plants for medicinal purposes. That's pretty much it for the most of our existence. And as we moved into an interglacial period and animals became, pretty much leaner, we required seasonal sugars to basically engage the Randall cycle, inflame ourselves and build up some fat tissue in order to have energy on board for those other periods. In the past, we would just get it from eating more fat from the animal, more than we needed for our just daily function. And that's how we built up our stores between, the absence of, easily available food and the non-absence. So, and that's how we've existed for most of our existence. So our genetics are tied to that. Now, obviously, there's been since we've domesticated animals and for dairy purposes and domesticated plants, we've had some level of adaptation. Populations that have been exposed to these longer, whatever foods they are, have slightly longer some level of adaptation. So it doesn't mean they're not contraindicated. It just means that they are able to tolerate certain things much better. But in terms of, animals that can really elucidate any real deep and meaningful, nah, not really. I'll give you an example. Rats, you can put them on MNM, which is a man-made compound of niacin. Fine. You can eat piggy, and you can to get really good levels of niacin. So do you really need to worry about? And a lot of other animal foods are a pretty good source of niacin. So do you really need NMN? It works in rats. It sort of extends their life substantially, far more than, but humans are much more complex, and also rats have a higher metabolic rate, and rats can endogenously produce more taurine, and they can do a number of other things. And so their physiology is very different. And so you can, rats are good to be able to see a mechanism, to be able to say, okay, if I take this compound within a mammalian sort of a model, we'll see this effect. Now, the percentage difference between a human and an animal is going to be quite substantially different. And we don't have that research. Why? Because we can't lock people up in a lab, for their whole life. We can do it with rats because they only live about 2+ years. So we can lock them up in their little cages and do experiments on them. Even monkeys are not useful. You can actually do some short-term studies with monkeys, but they live quite a few years, and nobody's going to do experiments that long. So rats are the favorite, even though they're very much an omnivorous animal, and let's say you give rats a lot of protein. I've talked about this before, like 70% protein, like that study that I actually showed about. Obviously in any mammal, you will not see any kidney damage. The excess protein that's not used for protein synthesis is used to build bigger organs, and organs that can function better, like bigger kidneys and stuff like that. So they end up with better detox capabilities, better, a lot of cellular function improves, and they become much larger, where humans don't. We don't become like 8 meters or, massive. They become much larger compared to the little rodents that are completely cloned. So obviously even protein reacts and behaves very differently in a rat model. So how much can we extrapolate? Not a lot in that regard when it comes to especially longevity. And most of the studies that people like David Sinclair and others do are all on rats, and I go, really, David, really? You're actually coming out and making massive claims on that? That's why I made that that video on David Sinclair a while back. One, criticizing him about metformin, a number of things that he was promoting, but also some of the pseudo pronouncements that he makes. You're good at mechanistic studies. Stick to what you know. He's very good at mechanistic studies. But to extrapolate outside mechanisms to basically make these assumptions of longevity and all that, really. I mean, there's been a recent, and I've had a few people. Please stop emailing me, asking me to do one on the longevity and taurine. I find it boring, irrelevant. Yes, I know that, taurine actually, I've actually discussed this in my live streams and many videos, how it has this ability. And these people say, oh, we know that it may have something to do with senescence and stuff like that. They got no idea, because they never went deep enough in the rabbit hole. They look at these studies at a surface level, typical of most people out there. Reductionist thinking, surface level thinking as well. But the reality is, taurine, what it does is it reduces immunosenescence and it reduces cellular senescence. And there's a number of mechanisms. I'll discuss them in the videos. I'm not going to discuss them here on a live stream. And so, if you've got better cellular function, your body is going to live longer and going to function longer. It just goes without saying. But we can't say. They come out and they got relative odds ratios, which really that's what it is. It's not relative risk. That's bullshit, because you haven't basically done an experiment for the whole life of a human. So they're extrapolating on this sort of stuff, and rats live 25 years longer. They're whoopee. Maybe that's the big longevity secret of the Japanese, that they consume so much fish that they actually get a longevity boost compared to the rest of the world, because they get high taurine. Seafood's high in taurine. But then again, when we look at the Okinawans, they live longer than Japanese. They consume more piggy. They don't consume as much taurine, much less seafood. They live longer. So is taurine the big longevity secret that we're all missing? No, it's a synergy. The more animal foods you have, when we look at populations, this is what also Price, when he went around, Dr. Price, realized if people don't know who he is, Weston A. Price was the head of the Dental Association of America at the time. He was basically the top man. He was a vegetarian, so he was biased. And he went again back then, more vegetarianism goes through these cycles, and veganism comes back and forward. It's all this sort of, and it's tied into a lot of this sort of some of the actual philosophical thinkings that are out there, and even the current transhumanist ideas. It's an evolution of these earlier things. I'm not going to go into it. It's for another video, another time. I've discussed this before. But really, he went around the world and he actually noticed the populations that consume more animal foods were healthier than the ones plants. He never found one vegan society. Not one. Zilch. Nada. Because their diet is a fasting mimicking diet. It's exactly what Londo does. The other researcher that does all those fasting mimicking diets. Well, what do you think veganism is? A fasting mimicking diet on steroids. No wonder they waste away. But you can only fast for so long. Even that other guy who fasted, who did a non-food fast, did it for 386 days or 85. I can't remember exactly. The Scottish guy back in the 60s. And he lost a lot of weight. He didn't live any longer. His life was relatively short. He went back to his old habits and stuff like that, old lifestyle. So there wasn't any dramatic change. Yes, he thinned out. Vegans did the same thing. Whoopee. They just do it over a longer period. It takes them about 5 years before they have catastrophic failure due to deficiencies, as Barkay would call them, the Church of Anorexia Vegana. So, yeah, it's just nonsense, all these sort of things. So, really, we can't. Yeah. Or we can go in on our archaeological evidence of what works. We've got anecdotes, and the anecdotes are non-research, like the video that I did on the Maasai, 70-year-old Maasai, and even the women that can be in their 40s and 50s still having children. 70-year-old male can still impregnate those women. And, and one young bloke there, his father was still alive and he was over 100. So that tells you everything, that an animal-based diet isn't going to basically affect your longevity. Now, the average birth, this sort of average life expectancy is bullshit. First of all, the West continues advancing in the average life expectancy for one simple reason. We've got a reverse pyramid we've got a demographic collapse. That means there's less young people, more old people. So that's why the averages are going up continuously. So that's another bullshit averages, statistics, just you can play with them around any way you like. It's really health span, how if you're living in those older years, if you're going to look really and be honest, you're going to say people living from 60 and above, what is the percentage of those people who are healthy or not healthy? When you look at these traditional societies like the traditional Inuit, traditional Hadza, traditional Maasai and all that, those people are living very healthy and robust into old age. That's the difference. Now, they may have more infant mortality, more people that die by being eaten on the hunt, eaten by a lion or killed, falling down a cliffside or whatever. These things happen. Where in our hermetically insulated Western world, we're much safer. Even if you have a heart attack, they can race you to the hospital and recover you. In the old days, you would die. So more heart people died back then, even though there was less heart disease. Today, there's more heart disease and less people die just because of modern medicine. So again, it doesn't tell you how healthy the population. It's just nonsense. We've got to be very careful about how people manipulate data and manipulate stuff and make things look the way they want them to look. So, yeah. Yeah, but, piggy, yes, got very good detox. But, the applicability to humans, yep. Anyway, let's move on. How you going, mate? Good to have you here, Norman. 69. That's a sexual position. Hope you enjoy that. Yes. The old fellow was trying to get himself organised today. That's what happens when you don't do videos for very long. G'day, Lukey. How are you, mate? And hello, good afternoon from Canada. It's always a pleasure to have you here. I hear that your illustrious leader, Mein Führer, Trudeau, is basically going to limit your media access shortly, so you won't be able to see foreign content. Fantastic. Such a great leader. Yes, such a man who is a warrior for human rights. Raminka, how are you, mate? Deborah, always a pleasure. Oops. At the 69. Okay, so you lube yourself with soybean oil. Interesting. Well, anyway, you're putting it to good use in that regard. At least you're not eating it, not consuming it. Ango, how are you? He lives and breathes. Let me just check. Pulse. Yep, still got a pulse. Yes, it's on again. It's definitely on again. Fox, how are you? Shah, how are you? Jordan, good to have you here, mate. Invite wedding ding. You got to come up with a better name. You know, I've got dyslexia, and that is really difficult for somebody with dyslexia. Oh, God. See what you've done? It's all your fault. What choline supplement brand do you recommend for methylation, homocysteine, MTHFR? Just pretty much, just the standard stuff by Carb. So, yeah. Let me just type this. And this is the one that I use. So the taurine by tartrate. And I'll just stick that in. That's the one I use. I just put it in the actual chat window. It's just a powder. It's got no other stuff in it. It's just pure choline, nothing else. So no fillers whatsoever. There are a lot of other things out there. Some of the bodybuilding brands, don't buy them. They're full of fillers and crap. It's just basically money-making commercial stuff, those ones. So do give them a miss completely in that regard. What benefits do you get from incorporating more lamb in a carnivore diet? You get a warmer feeling. That's what you get. There is a bit of a difference in the nutrient profile in that regard. So I tend to say to people, vary your meats. I'll have some beef. Beef tends to have more B12, compared to lamb, and especially compared to pork. So I will vary certain things that Fimples. Well, I'm glad you found my channel. Welcome. So you had no idea that I had a yeah. Well, initially I did. I just used to appear on Bart K's channel and do my stuff. If you go back to the Odyssey stuff, I've done a lot of things with Bart K. I've done even on 5G and all sorts of things we've looked at. Varied, from nutrition all the way to EMFs and all sorts of things. So welcome, mate. Um, yeah, and that's on his Odyssey channel, not on his current one. Current one, I've just made a few rare appearances on his live stream, and that's about it. We haven't done any collabs, me and Bart, for some time now. Back then, we were doing a lot of collabs. Now he tends to do the live streams and does a lot of these attack videos, so he enjoys doing that. It gets more clicks, clickbaity. So you know, that's his thing, which is fine. Somebody needs to basically um, call these crackpots out, and he does it really well. So good for him. Anyway, yeah, play around. I mean, the thing is, people can have susceptibilities, and they can vary from time to time. So people can have susceptibilities to all sorts of things, or their ancestors didn't consume a lot of these things. I tend to enjoy pork and lamb far more because that's what my ancestors primarily consumed: lamb, goat, and dairy and pork. So I sort of gravitated to those, and they suit me much better. Just generally, I feel much better. So genetically, there's probably some adaptations to those foods from within my family tree for a very long time. So, and I enjoy those foods anyway, and some seafood like squid in particular. I don't mind octopus, but I prefer squid far more than octopus. So, anyway, but those are certain things that I grew up with. So I've also got a bit of a palate for them. It's sort of, I'll have goat milk. Some people it smells sort of strange for them. I really enjoy it. So again, probably I've got the palatability sort of, is fine with me. Got to play around with things and see how you enjoy things, because at the end of the day, if you're going to do it long term, you've got to basically be able to enjoy a lot of the foods. Harry, so good to see you again. Strict time, yes, likewise. Hello everyone. Just finished my Taurine Cooper and top, and hoping to make it all the way through the first session without falling asleep. Fair enough. So it's evening where you are. Fair enough. Yes. Yeah. In terms of the amplification you get with melatonin, it varies. I'm a bit, like I can take taurine, I just don't get sleepy. Other people really get really sleepy. I have to take a lot to get sleepy, where others just take a small amount and they get really sleepy. So it does vary in that regard. Even though I've got all the blue blocking, even here, this one here, I've actually bought 2 of the new transition. What are they called? They're all through. They've got 3 different styles. They've got a day one, so you turn it on the daytime, which gives you the exact sort of frequencies of blue of like outdoor blue light. Not that I recommend doing that, but if you're working from home, you get out in the morning as a to for your circadian rhythms to be matched with the earth at your location, and so you're basically getting exposed for a few minutes to the sun coming up, and so this dawn dusk sort of thing. And then I'll come in and I'll, if I want to maintain a sort of the outdoor light, I can actually just turn it on. It's more probably that room over there, and the other one that actually has more value. I've put it in this, but I've ended up not having to use it. I only use it at night, so I may have to swap them over with one of the other rooms. Haven't made up my mind yet, but it actually will transition. So if you've got like kids and stuff like that, and they're indoors all the time, it's a good idea to basically have to be able to you turn it off, and it will actually go to one setting. You turn it on, off, go to the next one. So it initially goes to the night one, and if you do it, turn it off and on, it'll go to the morning, the day, and then midday, sort of midday afternoon, late afternoon, as you've got your dawn and your dusk period late in the afternoon. So you transition to that, and then you click it on and off, and it'll go to the next one, which will be the night one, which is sort of the much deeper yellow, where it takes out all the blue completely. And so to provide sort of the sort of wavelengths of this natural thing. There's another thing that I actually got, this sort of cable. I haven't tried it yet. I'll let you know what I think about it. It's that's also specific frequency of red light for red light therapy around the computer when you're around the computer. So I'm still investigating it. I'll let you know whether I think it's any good or not. At this stage, I've just bought it and testing it myself. So anyway, let's move on. How are you, Northeast Gold? Hello, Harry. I have uploaded my genetic data to Live Willow, and most interesting report was that choline, the suggestion I'm at risk of a deficiency, the report states. Yep, yeah, some people, I've got that same genetic predisposition. And so if you're not getting enough in your diet, it's always a good idea to supplement. Also, if you're exposed to a lot of, see, on a carnivore diet, we do need a bit more choline. And generally people need a choline deficient, a lot of the population anyway. And the reason for that is because we don't live, take a look at a Maasai. That person lives beyond any issue with maybe a lion, maybe a sort of, the life isn't, terribly stressful or terribly toxic around them. They're not exposed to fluoride. They're not exposed to mold. They're not exposed to other environmental toxins and chemicals and, you name it, that we are just walking through. I mean, even the brake, your brake pads, something like a large proportion of the atmospheric pollutants in a city are coming from these brake pads. There's chemicals in that and other hydrocarbons that are basically, are being turned into very fine particles, and that actually flows through, and you're actually ingesting that. So there's a lot of things in our environment that we're ingesting, which has a toxic effect. And so it will stress your detox pathways far more. And depending on whether your detoxification pathways and genetics as well are here, or, whatever they are, and the rate that they can actually detox, you can also have, deranged gut microbiome, which you're actually recycling back some of that waste. I'll actually explain. There's a video that I'm going to be making, and it'll cover that. Because of Dad's situation, I haven't had the time to do the gut issue and some of the others. I have done the recent histamine one. That was an old one that I'd promised ages ago and never got around doing it. And that was to give a comprehensive type picture on that, that regard. Yeah, probably the only things that I probably didn't cover were some of the micronutrients additional to I only covered the vitamin D. There is retinol plays a role there, and also some of the other nutrients but they're in the animal food. So if you're eating an animal food based diet, a carnivore diet, usually get those. So I didn't see it as important to basically mention them, in that regard. But vitamin D is one of those things that people are more susceptible on in the modern world on most diets, because of too much indoor living compared to the past. So there's all those sort of things. But yeah, I would, you've got to be very careful with a lot of these sites, the way they interpret things, because, they may say things like, oh, well, you don't have this. So, you need this plant. and they'll always be pushing the plant narrative or the supplement narrative, when a lot of these compounds are much higher in animal foods and not in some way inhibited. Like there's a whole lot of inhibitory factors in plant foods and you can't get access to them anyway, so it's nonsense. But it's still, the propaganda still there. They may point out these things, and remember, your genes are not your destiny. So if you have a choline deficient diet, obviously, then you're going to have worse outcomes in terms of methylation compared to someone else. But if you're got a choline sufficient diet, and it's very easy. I mean, you have a couple of eggs and eat a good big steak. Pretty easy without even any supplementation. I have done a whole lot of choline videos. If you Google choline and my name, you'll find a lot of information, or food sources and all sorts of things. Eggs are one of the easiest ones to get into your system in terms of getting quite a bit of that. But also, choline is very important for kids with sort of issues like autism and stuff like that. It improves the outcomes. Taurine does as well. So all those sort of things. People are starting to pick up on some of this. I've left a lot of things around on blogs, which have to do with a lot of these neurological things, and people are starting to tap into. I've noticed that some sites now are talking more about taurine and choline in terms of kids with autism. So the message is getting out there. I keep on putting things on blogs. Some of the actual haters delete my comments because they are arse hats. Say no more, because they'd rather medicate the kids than actually get the good message out. But anyway, we just have to persevere. That's pretty much it in that regard. And if you take a look at the level of women that have kids with some of these issues, they tend to have some of the lowest choline, vitamin D, and sort of taurine levels in their system. Tells you a lot. Remember, taurine is required for new brain cells. Kids don't get. That's why mother's milk gives you a lot of it to develop a big brain. So you're not getting enough, breastfeeding enough on the tit as a youngster, you're not going to get a big enough brain. Yes, that's another problem in our modern world. Yes. Anyway, Kronos 77. Yes. If I buy Linus cuts of chicken and pork and add my own fat, will that mitigate bad effects of poor diet? Look, if that's all you can afford, and you go, I actually say to people, look, if you can get certain types of cuts of meat which are cheaper, because it's much harder with the food inflation now and all that sort of stuff, and then you can actually go away and do something about it. Yeah, why not? In that regard, I mean, you could also look at adding, because with a lean, you may need to sort of consider supplementing things like taurine in a sense. You don't have to go crazy. 2 grams are probably good enough in that regard. But at the same time, I would say, let me just get my coffee. It's getting cold. That's why. So, I would say that you're going to basically struggle a bit if you don't get good quality fats in that regard. There's also the sort of level of I'm trying to think now. What is it called? Food something. Food data. Let me just find it. Yeah, my food data. That's right. So, come on. So you just have to go under the food list, and it will give you all the sort of. I'll just select it on the choline one, and I'll drop that into here. So that's a really good site, and you can actually go to the, like, if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll find where it's got it's got like from the nutrient ranking tools, and you can go into the ranking tools, and you can go foods high in choline, and you can go through and select the different foods. And I'll just put that in as well, that page, and you can actually change the ranking. I always select 100 grams serving as the tool. So I actually should have put that in. Okay, so that's the with 100 grams, which is 3.53 ounces. And then you just pick the foods for the different stuff, and it'll actually give you a lot of information, and it sort of just helps you sort of understand, you know, what are your best options in that regard. So so and stuff like that. Anyway, so let's move on. Okay, that's you have severely decreased expression. Okay, you mean with the choline sort of, I think it's the choline one from memory. Can't remember exactly. So it's been a while. So did you check that on Snippedia? Let me just SNpedia. Okay. And so RS 79197. Remember, I looked at this sort of stuff a long time ago. Genetic variation in choline metabolism enzymes alter choline metabolism in young consuming choline intake is recommended. Well, there you go. Pretty much AA is that's not the primary one. I remember, but I think there's another one, which is the major one. I think it's that one. Yeah, this is the main one. Oops. And the actual page, I'll go back So this is the major page that has the two single nucleotide polymorphisms for that condition. So SNPpedia is pretty good because you can actually just do a bit of a check and find out. It sometimes has links to certain studies and stuff like that, so it's useful. It's what I did ages ago when I was looking into some of this sort of stuff. And it's annoying that it's actually showing my current IP, which it didn't used to do that. So yes, they must have changed a few things. Naughty, naughty, naughty. So that's annoying, to say the least. Anyway, let's move on. Oops. Is a poor vitamin D the main reason people are prone to getting sick in winter? Yeah, to a large extent. What it regulates is the immune system response. So your body's immune system needs to be regulated so it doesn't actually overreact or underperform when it's exposed to, a foreign protein, which may come from, a virus. So that's it. There are receptor sites on the actual immune system which are coated with vitamin D receptors. So, obviously, to have such a plethora of receptor sites, vitamin D plays a big role in regulating the immune response. The other thing that kills older people is not the actual virus, the initial virus. The thing that actually kills them is the cytokine storm that is initiated, uncontrolled attack. Vitamin D prevents that. Simple as that, because it regulates the immune system. Obviously, it also plays a role in producing new stem cells, new immune cells. So it's involved. So if you've got a poor vitamin D status, your ability to produce new stem cells for the immune system is going to be reduced. So you're going to have less capacity to defend, provide your frontline troops of the immune system to protect you from, the common cold, which is the biggest one. That usually it's the sort of influenza, common cold. Those are the things that most people are affected in winter primarily. Well, there are a few others. There's a norovirus and a few other viruses that sometimes seem to be prevalent in different times of the year. But, these are the key ones. And also immunosenescence is a problem as well. So if your immune system is old, it tends to move away, even the T cells, away from it, sort of being naive types to being cytokine types. That means it produce a lot of inflammatory sort of cytokines. And they tend to be more senescent, more older aged immune cells. And as we get older, because especially in the modern world, we've got inappropriate diets, we end up moving towards our immune system tends to become aged and more prone to cytokine over production. Also, by producing new stem cells, you're increasing your naive T cells. So a more youthful immune system. Also, fasting can be very useful for that. A couple of days fasting and then rebuilding a new immune system, making sure you've got a sufficient vitamin D to help with that, and then using taurine that plays also a protective role to prevent the immune system from becoming senescent. So each time an immune cell goes out and fights the good fight, taurine it actually gets slightly damaged. Taurine can actually reduce that oxidative stress, that actual damage to those immune cells. It also within the thymus, that front part, it prevents the remodeling because it shrinks as you get older, especially in the modern world. But if are able to prevent remodeling of the thymus, taurine does that as well. That's in animal foods, only in animal foods. And if you want to convert it in your body, you need methionine and cysteine. And you're only going to get those aminos if you're eating enough animal foods. So in particular meat. So, it's synergy, obviously, plays an role. But if you're missing a component, it's not going to work as well, obviously. The sort of plays a role in the activation. Taurine plays an activation role within those stem cells that are then affected by the taurine to become proper naive T cells, as an example. So there is a lot of interplay of a lot of molecules that we find in animal foods. So it's a synergy of a number of things. As I've always said, sun, salt, and meat are your best ways to maintain good, healthy body. So, and I stand by that. And so does the N15 data of our ancestors, which is baked into the collagen long bones of our ancestors. So why should I argue with my ancestors? They were doing it for millions of years and were very robust and allowed us to survive, so we existed today and we didn't die out as a species. He's not too bad. He's not too bad. He's still struggling a bit, but he's getting there. No broken bones, no fractures, which is shocking even to the doctors. He's 88 and a half. But, taurine helps with bones, improve bone mineral density and bone density. Also leucine for, in the animal foods that he's consuming. He was doing supplementary in the early days. Some weight-bearing exercises, just light 1.5 kilos twice a day for at least 5 days a week. So he's basically been looking after himself quite a bit. My periodontitis, oral health, you mean? Let's just keep it normal. Hasn't improved since starting Carnivore 6 months ago. Bart suggested cutting out milk. So now I'm eating cheese instead. Yeah, look, sometimes just cutting out you can reintroduce those foods back, but sometimes you need to sort of do a bit of an elimination, because sometimes some of the pathogenic bacteria that are in your mouth will use the sugars, even from the milk sugars, to basically so we need to change the microbiome situation in the mouth, and over time that will shift, and as it shifts, then you'll be able to reintroduce things like that without any problems. So you really need to just eliminate. Sometimes we've found nowadays in a lot of populations that some of the actual strains of Firmicutes are not found in the mouth anymore. They're in the gut, in the colon, which normally there would be very little of. So that's telling us again that even the microbiomes in our systems are being deranged in one way or another. The problem is we don't know enough about microbiome to know exactly what initially caused it. I think it's the modern diet, obviously, because you don't see it in tribal populations. But then how do you actually turn it around? I think it takes time for things to sort of reset themselves, and with the animal foods that you're eating, slowly but surely. So you got to be patient. 6 months is you're in an early stage, mate. You're in an early stage. So, and anything else? Yeah, look, I wouldn't supplement vitamin A. Just eat enough eggs. If you eat enough eggs and things like ghee or butter, you should get enough retinol. You're eating cheese, that should give you enough menaquinone 4, vitamin K2, that is. Probably the only thing you need to concern yourself Are you getting enough sun exposure? If you're not getting enough sun exposure all year round, you may have to consider, you know, I mean, you could go for a low dose minoquinone 4 as well as an interim thing, because that would help take out the soft tissue calcification and put it into the actual bones, including the teeth. So that could help. And a number of people have seen improvements by supplementing minoquinone 4. So when I was doing it for my cardiovascular thing, I saw a lot of improvements in my teeth, pretty much eliminating a lot of because I had a lot of holes, a lot of decay and damage, probably another reason why I had cardiovascular disease as well. So my oral health was appalling on a sad diet, and really eating foods that were much higher in minoquinone 4, and also taking supplementation for a period of time seemed to really make my teeth really strong. And now I can just munch through bones like chicken bones and things like that, where I would hurt, I'd have pain in the past, and now I just munch through them like they're just nothing. For the hyaluronic acid, obviously. Yes. Plant sterols replace cholesterol in these cells. Which issue can they cause? A lot of issues. So, yeah, we need to be also a small amount of plants aren't, the body at the gut level can actually remove some of that and prevent it from going in. But at a certain level, if you're consuming too much, it eventually will overcome that impedance and actually pretty much get into the system. That's when you're going to start having problems. And a lot of people seem to basically ignore all that fact, unfortunately. So I've always trying to remind people that it's really important that they sort of avoid these foods like the plague. But, if you've been exposed to a lot of these sort of things, especially the oils are extremely high when it comes to this problem. And a lot of people are completely ignorant about that reality out there, which, what can you say? It's a problem in that regard. But also, I would also have to say that the sort of issues that it creates, let's say in the red blood cells, it will actually get incorporated and actually cause them to become stiff. So they'll become stiff, and as they move through, because you've got narrow blood vessels, normal blood vessels, because animal cholesterol is waxy, and so it can actually allow the red blood cell to change its form and sort of elongate and get around these thinner, change its shape to go through these thinner blood vessels. So it's really and some people, I remember meeting a woman in the cardiology ward, and she couldn't actually do it all even. So they had to put her on a whole bunch of drugs, they decided to, because they couldn't actually do a stent. A lot of her arteries were very narrow. So just some people have these really narrow. I don't know whether it's a genetic. I never went into it, and that could be a problem for her. As an example, if you have a lot of these plant sterols, that you would end up not being able to elongate and get into those sort of areas to provide oxygen, to provide what those cells need, and you'd end up with a bit of a hypoxia, and then slowly those cells would sort of die or become senescent, aged, and all that. And they'd probably become potentially even cancerous in the long run under certain circumstances. Usually the immune system would clear them out, and then you may get some angiogenesis, new blood vessels growing around to provide nutrients. But, there's always a potential for all sorts of things depending on your immune system, your general health. There's just so many factors. But generally speaking, I think that there can be problems in the general functioning and the general structure of these bilayers, because everything's got a bilayer, whether it's a cell wall, an LDL, anything in the book, it's just got these bilayers. One is hydrophilic and one is hydrophobic. One likes water, one doesn't. And the cholesterol plays an important glue to basically maintain the cellular integrity and also to prevent leakiness of cell walls and stuff like that. So can create these issues as well. So it's definitely not good to have plant, it should be in the trunk of a tree. That's where that sort of stuff should be, not in our bodies, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's move on. Based on genotype, CT has decreased PIMP enzyme. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, that's still. I think that's the one. Is that the one associated with fatty liver? I think it is. Maybe, I'm not sure. So that again would be a choline related issue. So hold on. Let me just go into. Oh shit. So just let me get it up. Yeah, the fatty liver thing. That's right. Yeah, I'm sort of affected by that as well. So it explains why I had fatty liver. And I also, because I've got an MTHFR, which affects the pathways, not eating enough meat back then. I'm overtaxing that. And the actual methionine cycle is primarily a choline betaine. So betaine's at the heart of that. Usually the B12 is out here. They call it the primary one, but really, it's actually, it comes off the actual providing methyl donors for the homocysteine to be converted back to methionine. But you can actually go from betaine right to, converting it directly back to methionine. So homocysteine, that is. So and that actually spares. That's why choline. So when you eat organ meats, you eat eggs, you eat more meat, you'll get more choline, and it spares folate, and even to some extent B12, which has other purposes in the body as well. Because the B12 also plays a role with bone health. That's another thing I haven't made a video on, but it does. So to really get into it as well. So that's another reason why people have osteoporosis and all that, again, by not eating enough meat or having these genetics and then overtaxing that part of the methylation, which they call the primary, because anyway, anything associated with sugar or fat or sugar metabolism, they'll always call the primary. You know what they're like. When really the one that actually goes straight to betaine and then bang to both either that way or goes the other way to down through to cysteine and basically then to taurine, So I consider that the primary one. They may not, they consider it the secondary one, but I just think they're just full of horse manure, so pretty much. Anyway, so here's the snip. Let me just copy that. A little Snipedia today. And the other question is related again to the same thing, and that's the folate thing. You can spare folate with choline, especially when you've got that gene. You just have to, that's the next question down. Again, I put it in the actual chat box for you. Again, that is the way to go about without going into all the questions. No, that's fine. But yeah, that's again another related to choline. Lukey, how are you, mate?
All right, Harry. I'm doing fine. Hello, everyone. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
I'm getting a whole lot of genetic questions today.
Yes,
There's like a tour of genetic tests.
these people
Testing
are
people have been doing it.
these people are obsessed with their snips and everything.
Yeah, as I say to people, your genes are not your destiny. But if you're eating inappropriate foods, they could become your destiny. So that's
Yeah.
really the issue. I mean, like the 24% of people that have got that calcium issue where their ancestors consumed a lot of dairy. So that means they need to as well. Otherwise, they won't get enough, and they'll get two things: either higher blood sugar, or they'll get more heart palpitations and arrhythmias for the simple reason that their serum calcium will be much lower in their bloodstream. So, yeah, a lot of these things do play a role. As you can see, people think calcium that involved in the carbohydrate sugar metabolism. Yep, it also affects glucagon like peptide 1. I've already done a video ages ago about that. Again, that actually, when that goes up with serum calcium, it also, or more protein, also puts it up. But some people need the additional calcium as well they need the double whammy, not just the one because of the genetics. That sort of resolves that issue, and you don't have the sort of Saladino issue of higher blood sugar or heart palpitations and goes, what is happening? He should basically probably check his genetics because he does come from southern Italy, and southern Italians have very much got similar genes to Greeks. And this expression is much higher in the Greek population because dairy was very popular amongst Greeks from antiquity. Just look at the Homeric epics. They talk about cheese and yogurts and stuff like that the ancient Greeks consumed quite a lot about. So what do you think's happening? The amount of those genetics are much higher. I wouldn't be surprised if he has those genes and he's compensating between guzzling down a whole lot of sugar to basically push up his insulin and sort of mask the whole problem, where really the problem is a serum calcium issue.
He used
You
to be
twat.
against dairy.
So just by keeping up his insulin, but he's keeping up his insulin for a long period of time, and what he does is he's able to hold on to without dumping too much calcium at the kidney level. Is just masking the problem, but I would probably wouldn't say I'm not going to put money on betting with him because I wouldn't trust him to do the right thing with his testing. Could get somebody else to do the test just to basically get the money off me. So I don't think he's a very well. I'm not going to say anything about him, but I just don't think from the stuff that we've heard in the past that I would be prepared to trust him on a bet. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, okay.
Um, well, look, but that goes for many people. This is why I don't do tests. I don't bother because anybody can fabricate anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I've basically fabricated my own low LD, plunging, because I usually tend to have lower LDL C and total cholesterol anyway. Not that that's if it's native, who cares? It's only oxidized that's a problem, and that's only with seed oils and crap like that, which have got high levels of primary, secondary oxidative products and aldehydes, which do a lot of the damage, cause a lot of the oxidative stress in the bloodstream, and also oxidize. And it's really what we are calling here ox-LDL, we're calling esterified cholesterol. That means cholesterol, which is a waxy material that's connected to fatty acids that are from seed oils that are combined with it. That's the oxidized cholesterol that they are finding. Why don't they say, oh, where did that fat come from that's in an esterified state with cholesterol? Oh, from vegetable oils. They knew that back in the 83 and 84 study, which I've talked about in the past. And what did those academics recommend because they were gutless? Statin or some sort of solution, medicated solution to lower LDL-C rather than because we can't change the food environment was their approach. What a cop-out and what a bunch of gutless academics. Yes. Yep. Yeah, you talk about the GLP-1, yeah, protein, and sometimes can be a calcium stuff like that as well. You know, gallbladder can cause problems. You know, some derangements if the gallbladder is not working properly. You know, it takes time to sort of sort out the gallbladder. I've covered it in the histamine one recently about, you know, milk thistle, things like malic acid, taurine, choline. All these help improve the gallbladder function. So I'm not going to. So go back, check. I've done a GLP-1 as well video. If you Google my name and all that, you'll find all the information. So we're not going to cover it here again. Do you think the Low Carb Down Under upcoming October event worth attending? I mean, if you're in I wouldn't fly from Hobart to it. But if you're in the city where it's happening, why not go up? You know, if it was happening in Hobart, I'd go. But I'm not going to say that it's, you know, in the old days when I was a low carber, I found it interesting quite a bit, and I learned a lot of things, you know. But I find that to a large extent, a lot of people out there tend to view reality in a very surface level. They don't dig deeper and try and look at the intricate interrelationship between a lot of different compounds and a lot of different systems in our body, between our physiology and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, what's your experience with a lot of the people that you deal with on the Discord? And can you also put the Discord into the chat so people know where to come and chat with you guys?
Sure thing, Harry. I'll tell you the link there. But yeah, I've noticed that I think this tends to happen everywhere, but I've noticed that some people they seem a little bit lost. They like have this very like simplistic view of things. They'll be like, "Oh my God, no, I can't have a single gram of a carb," or things of the sort. And protein becomes excess sugar in the blood, and it's like, and we keep having to talk about those things over and over, and it's but I think it's a general tendency,
Really?
and I'm much more satisfied by going in depth in things. And when you have like these presentations to a wider audience, sometimes you just can't do this like finer, in depth type of explanation. That's what I feel like, at least.
Yep.
Like I see a lot of people still
Yes.
get
Look, I mean,
caught up in like heat doses and everything, but it's like there's so much more to carnivore,
Exactly. I think to a large extent, a lot of people that come to the carnivore diet, they do come with a lot of baggage from other previous diets as well.
Yep.
And some of that thinking permeates through. And so I don't think a lot of people understand how to do the carnivore diet properly. If you look at traditional populations, they've got a food culture. They know how to combine certain foods or how to get rid of anti-nutrients or what to use for specific ailments. They have a cultural tradition. We've lost that. And that's another part of the problem. And that's why everybody talks about, oh, how much of this should I take? I go, what's your physical activity? If your physical activity is quite a bit, your protein intake requirements are going to be completely different than somebody who's sedentary, doing absolutely nothing, a couch potato. But if somebody is quite physically active and tearing down and turning over, protein quite a bit, it's going to be a different thing. If somebody's got atrophy because they've actually under-eaten protein for a long time, those people, you can put them on 4 grams, even if they're slightly sedentary, and they'll get a lot of protein synthesis for a long time, and they'll just go through protein like it's mad, like they're addicted to it. And then at some point they'll say, I can't eat as much meat, because the body's going to say, I've had enough. I've got the nutrition. I've increased my bone density. I've increased my muscle density based on the physical activity that I do on a daily basis. I've regrown the organs, have become larger, enlarged. Like my dad's kidneys became larger, eating more meat. So the extra protein, even if it doesn't go to protein synthesis, it will go to actually building up other tissue and improving their function. So it doesn't go to sugar unless you run out completely of all other energy sources in that regard. Yes, there are some gluconeogenic amino acids, but really you have to have your body, like your cells have to have no requirement for large amounts of protein. And at that stage, you're completely healthy. You've got no big requirements. And then you're forcing down your throat massive amounts, a bit like those competitions where people deliberately overeat to win a competition. And you're doing that on a daily basis. On that, you may overshoot slightly and force your blood sugar to go up. But from my experience, very few people actually even get close to that. What I usually find is they usually have a genetic reason. They're either under eating, they're not getting enough calcium is one issue, or they may be on some medication which is causing some derangement. It's always something different. And once they actually give me a full profile of what they're doing, how they're eating, what meds they're using or have used, or what they've done in the past, it all makes sense, and I can explain it to them. And it goes, oh. And then I give them a transition plan, So, and usually it just sorts out everything in that regard. I was just going to ask you, what sort of events do you guys get in Brazil?
So actually, there is a local low carb convention down south in Santa Catarina, I believe, the southernmost state, which is kind of sad because it's farther away from many people. But yeah, there's like it happens every year or so, and yeah, I think even Sean Baker came to it, not like maybe last year or something. So it is rather interesting, but yeah,
Okay.
there's that low carb convention there, and I think there's another. It's a lower profile event here in downtown São Paulo. So yeah, it's still very niche though, because like a lot of people don't even know what the keto diet is around here.
Yeah, it's sort of oops.
Might be breaking up a bit. There's quite a bit of delay.
I'm going to blur my background a bit. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Because it's the same connection into the home, unless I should have checked my phone. I've got it over there at the moment. But anyway, they're always recently they've been doing a lot of upgrades. I don't know why, but that can be a bit of a problem as well. Anyway, question: my aunt recently blood test showed high uric acid. She probably loves her fruit, and she probably loves her sweets. So I would bet she wouldn't be on meat. Low kidney GFR. What nutrition can help reverse this problem? I would definitely get taurine. Now, I don't know whether she's on blood pressure meds or lithium or whatever. There is a video, ITX. If you go under the actual taurine playlist, you'll find it. And it does talk about medications. And so if she's on that, she'll have to adjust her meds. And you may have to start a very low, like 0.5 gram per mil, then move up to 1 gram per mil, check her blood pressure, see if she needs adjustments to her meds and stuff like that. And eventually she could get off them if she was doing, some people find it, if they do per mil 2 grams, they usually get off them. One other thing, the nice thing about it, by doing it 2 grams per mil, you end up eventually getting to that level. Initially you start at half, then you go to 1 gram, and then you go to 2 grams. It will lower glycation in the kidneys, so lower blood sugar. It will also lower lactate levels, that sort of recycling of through, back to the liver that actually happens to basically repackage it out and send it out again. So if the mitochondria can't actually use the excess sugar, what they do is they produce a whole lot of lactate and just push it out. So the thing is, I would say there can be a number of reasons why she may be, because there could be methylation issues. There can be a lot of issues that could have actually caused a lot of these issues. But probably the biggest one will be definitely carbohydrates, high carbohydrate diets that she's probably been on for a very long time. That would be the biggest culprit. And a particular fructose is usually the biggest culprit in the diet. Unfortunately, most modern people nowadays, if they're having sodas, they're getting fructose. If they're having fruit, they're getting fructose. Most of the sweets have got, either sugar, honey, things like that, and they're high in fructose as well. Some people are crazy enough to buy stuff with the agave and stuff like that, which have got super high levels of fructose. It's a health food, haven't you known? Don't you know? Yeah, so and I wouldn't be surprised if she has fatty liver, not any kidney issues. If she was to do an ultrasound, they'd probably find fat deposits, not only in her kidneys, but also in other organs like her pancreas, her liver, and things like that. So again, these fatty deposits build up. You need some fats around the organs, some visceral fat, because it provides, easily accessible energy, but you don't need too much. Excess visceral or fat deposits inside organs, not a good thing. So these are sort of problems of the modern world. So, but at the same time, if I was going to pick one supplement, and only one supplement, would have to be taurine, because it's a Swiss Army knife. It'll improve bone density, improve muscle density by myostatin inhibition. It will basically do all these wonderful things on regulating ions in the system to put them in the right place. It will calm people down. It will do so many things, reduce oxidative stress. It will reduce senescence. It will improve the immune function. It'll improve the gut function. It'll improve the ability for the gut and the gallbladder, and you name it. Everything starts working better. So it works on so many levels. So that would be my number one. Obviously, there could be other issues as well that may need mitigating as well. So it's not a lot of information in the ITX, but I would definitely start with taurine in her diet and try and get her to consume, because she hasn't got to what we call kidney failure. So she can still filtrate to some extent protein, but you may have to spread it out a bit so it's not like a big bolus, because she's still going to be having carbs, so she'll still get a bit of an insulin spike in every meal anyway. We're just lowering the insulin spike by putting taurine in there, by lowering the blood sugar levels, because taurine acts like metformin in a sense without the side effects. So much better approach. But at the same time, we don't want to actually put too much of a bolus of protein in one meal. So we want to spread it out a bit. And I would also use leucine supplementation. And the reason for using leucine supplementation is until she can get her protein or filtration capacity up, we want to be able to improve the functioning and the growth of different tissue in the body. We want to enhance protein synthesis. Even in a fasted state or in a low or a poor quality protein state, leucine will improve protein synthesis. And that's important. And that means it'll also spare a bit of protein for the organs to be able to grow. But over time, you sort of need to increase the protein intake. That's what Dad did, and his atrophying kidneys started growing again. And he's more carnivorous now. Plus, his kidney cancer is halved. He'll probably die with it, but I'm hoping that in the next couple of years, if he persists with trying to keep his sugar down, that we can eliminate it completely. It'd be great if he could go into ketosis and stop it all, but he won't, So I can only go so far. You can only convince people to do so much. Otherwise, they'll tell me to F off. Yes, these old people. Uncontrollable old kids. What do we... Bob, how does one fix a copper toxicity issue? And can you tell me if you are low in copper? If you want to know exactly what your copper levels are in your body, whether it is a copper toxicity or whatever, I would actually do a hair mineral test. So hair mineral analysis would actually tell you exactly what's in your cells. I wouldn't do a blood test, useless, because the body actually maintains homeostasis of and will draw from cells a certain amount of different micronutrients as it requires to maintain a homeostasis of the blood system. So that's not the place you should be looking. You need to be looking at the actual cells themselves. And so doing a biopsy, that's a bit, you can do a biopsy. Some companies do. You go in, they do a muscle biopsy. That's one way of actually finding out. Most people use the easiest way, which is they just get they order in a kit. They cut a bit of hair based on the instructions. They put it into the container. They send it to a lab, and then they do a hair mineral test to work out exactly what your levels are. So unless you really know what your levels are, you don't really know whether, if you haven't done a test, you don't know. You're speculating. Maybe from some symptoms you read on Google Medicine or the AI, which just told you a whole lot of baloney because it's a propaganda tool to push plant-based diets. So it's not going to tell you, because if you put junk in, garbage in, you'll get garbage out. Believe me, that's how it works. My grandmother had most of the bangers recipe of pumpkins, banana breads. Okay. He likes his pumpkin bread. Anyway. Can't change him. How does Sean Baker eat so fast? He's posted a video downing a kilogram of steak in 7 minutes. I want to be able to do this. Go and ask him. Don't ask me.
Man's got a strong jaw.
On that front?
I think, I think I've mentioned before, I love New York strips, picanha basically. But my favorite cut to have on a regular basis is beef sirloin. That's what I love the most. And I love pork ribs as well. I have them probably 4 to 5 days a week. They're delicious. Yeah, but
Yes,
I usually do
exactly.
about half a kilo
Yeah,
as
so,
my main meal. Because I eat a lot of
yeah,
eggs.
look, he's a machine. But he's a big guy. You have to remember, he's a big guy. I think somebody said he's I can't remember, 6'5". Is that right? Or am I?
Yeah, I can't
He's just
quite.
ginormous.
Yeah, he's in. I can't remember if it's 6'3" or 6'5", but it's something like that.
Yeah, because I think it was Jonathan that actually said, because Jonathan's 6'3", and he was taller than Jonathan.
Yeah, I think that's it, Harry.
So it's a big bloke. You know, our Jonathan. Yeah, yeah. You need to direct those sort of questions to Dr. Baker, not me, and how he does it. Look, obviously having good, I can eat quite fast as well, and I think you have to be able to munch stuff, and you know, if you've got good cranial distancing and stuff like that, if you've got narrow cranial things, obviously that's going to be way more difficult to sort of munch a lot and swallow a lot at the same time. So if you look at Sean Baker, he's got much better cranial structure of his head, which means that he's got better jawline, straighter teeth, all that sort of stuff, which means that he's got better the internal structures of the throat and all that are not constricted in any way, which is good, which means that he's got no sleep apnea or any of these issues that a lot of other people suffer. So that probably helps him to be able to consume much more rapidly. Anyway, oops, double clicked. Can the sun damage the eyes? If so, how can one heal them? You haven't been stargazing, have you? Yes, with that goatee fella. It's very.
Yeah, apparently, her
Look,
legs
taurine
are
helps
now
a lot.
primal.
Taurine helps a lot. Yeah, well, taurine helps a lot with eye damage. It's probably the only molecule that I can think of that helps a lot. But in some cases, because the vascularization or the amount of blood vessels around the outer part of the eye, around, there's less of those. So much harder to fix that sort of stuff. Niacin seems to help, or from the salvage pathway, the sort of the breakdown, one of the actual nicotinamide, to be more precise, which is quite cheap. You can buy it for $7 for a whole bottle. So sometimes it's called niacinamide as well. There's the other term use it, but I prefer to get the exact terminology because it depends on the structure to be exactly like the salvage one, which is nicotinamide. So that's the type that I always buy. Not the NMN, which is a different thing. It does have nicotinamide in it, but it's bound differently. So, yeah, and this helps with skin hydration and stuff like that. A lot of things, reducing things like acne and all sorts of things. And it also helps with the sort of surface part of the eye. There's been some research as well. Taurine does, but it actually does more the inner and the back part of the eye, because that's where most of the glycation happens. So yeah, those probably two would be the best to help. Anyway, yeah, that's a lot of people nowadays, because of oxidative stress, tend to move towards cataracts, where you don't see that in tribal people.
Mhm.
Again, it's because we've had a poor diet for a very long time, and we come to the sort of latter part of our lives and we realize, oh, we got a lot of damage. And then we start looking to try and find solutions. Like all of us, I've done the same thing. Some come earlier than others, like yourself.
Yep. Yeah, I'm thankful for it. By the way, Harry, there's this guy. I think he watches your videos. He's called. I mean, I might not say his name, but he's got a small YouTube channel. I had no idea. He's an animal-based proponent as well, and he was talking a lot about fasting. He's a big fasting enthusiast, and
Yep.
he was talking about how so fasts can like the autophagy can actually repair some of the glycated like retinol or proteins that promote cataracts. And he was even talking about how one
Yes,
of
it
his
can.
viewers
Yeah.
I think it was his dad or something that he did a 4-day fast and his cataracts cleared. And he was like, I would have never expected such a fast benefit, but it makes
Yep.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Fasting does help quite a lot in lowering the glycation. When I find that people have difficulty doing the fast, I put them on taurine. And if they're not on any meds, I put them on high doses of taurine, and sort of they can bring down the glycation in their body quite fast. But I do tell them to consume a bit of, so to avoid hypoglycemia, because they're not fat adapted. I do tell them, encourage them to consume some liquid fat
Mhm.
called cream
Yep.
while they're doing this to avoid hypoglycemia,
Yeah, makes sense.
because they still need
Oh,
some energy.
by the way, what do
And
you
if they
think?
can't tap to and if they've still got too high, their insulin is still a bit on the high side.
Yep,
Yep,
absolutely.
go ahead.
So I I've been seeing. So it's the same guy as well. He talks a lot about so acetate, so about using vinegar as a fasting promoter, which it sort of makes sense, but I never stopped to think about it because the acetate will push for more oxidative phosphorylation because you have to oxidize the acetate. There's nothing else you can do with it. At least that's what he says.
You can actually acetate. Well, acetate can go to the liver and it actually can be converted back to glucose.
Okay.
So it can actually be converted back to glucose in that regard. But the small amount that somebody would get from apple cider
Hmm.
vinegar is bugger all. So it's probably
Interesting.
not going to have. It's probably going to have the effect that he believes in. And I've used it in
Mhm.
the past, like apple cider vinegar, in that similar vein. And I've also used like coffee, like plain coffee, no milk, and also which enhances
Mm.
AMPK and also
Okay.
improves the sort of fat oxidation as well. So these are sort of old biohacks that people have used in fasting. Even though I don't like, I usually have like if I'm going to do it, I'll have like half a cup of coffee because I don't like black coffee that much.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'll have less, but to get that effect as well. Yeah, and you can, as he says, you can use the apple cider vinegar as well
Interesting.
for that purpose. That's an old thing. I think the person who popularized that a bit was, I think Bergs, Eric Bergs.
Oh yes.
He's talked about it for ages in the past. It's either him or one of the others in the low carb community. I just can't remember
Mhm.
who. So it's been known and popularized for some time, and in particular, apple cider vinegar they always promote the most because with the mother, being organic and
Yep.
all this sort of stuff. Anyway, the
Yeah.
woo woo stuff
Yeah.
that people, but
And
yeah,
that
fine.
that
Yeah, yes, you can
that's
get a bit
partly
a bit
why.
extra, or you can do a dry fast and really put it on steroids.
Yeah, precisely. No, yeah, but that's partly why I was asking because I always
You can
heard
you
so
can you
many
can yeah,
cuckoo things about the vinegar, and it made me confused.
mm,
But now thinking about the acetate, it's I actually never stopped to think about it. And I'm also like halfway into a 3-day fast, which I might go for 4 days. So that's why I'm curious as well.
Yeah. See, even fiber, for instance, that'll actually produce. When you're eating meat, you don't get a lot of acetate production
Mhm.
from the actual, because the actual proteins that are which are ketogenic, they especially, well, leucine's one of them, but many of the branched chain amino acids. What happens is you produce more like isobutyrate and many of the others. You don't produce as much acetate compared to what you get from fiber fermentation, which you get far more in comparison. But that's probably also when somebody's more plant-based, they probably may end up converting more of that back to sugar from the high fiber amount that they're producing. But obviously from just vinegar, no, it's not going to be really an issue for that to happen. It's not going to happen. But it's one of the few ketone bodies that actually can be converted back to sugar. So, yes, always interesting. Yeah. Good to have you here, Neff. It's been a while. Anyway, hereditary hemochromatosis, should I avoid consuming liver, or could it assist in making after section? Look, with hemochromatosis, we've had a lot in this community that basically consume. I usually get people that have got hemochromatosis, if they don't want to take taurine supplementation, to consume slightly more fish in their diet. And what they do is they see an improvement in the hemochromatosis, because taurine has the ability to regulate and achieve homeostasis of iron in the system. And I'd also be less concerned about ferritin. It's transferritin you need to be concerned about. Ferritin is storage, it's safe storage. So even if it goes up, it can go up because of a virus attack to your body. So it's not going to be, it's the transferritin that's the issue. If it's too high, that's when I get concerned. I go, yeah, there could be an issue there. But usually if you can regulate ions, and I mean, remember I talked about that study ages ago that they did in the Gaza Strip, where those girls had low iron, gave them taurine, fixed up their iron homeostasis. Well, it does similar things with hemochromatosis. It's been shown to reduce the oxidative stress of hemochromatosis, taurine, in studies, not only in rat models, but also in human models. They're small studies, they're pilot studies and stuff like that, or they're a small group of people because they just can't get the funding. Unfortunately, drugs get more funding, but what they do show is a decrease. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're on a more animal-based diet, and specifically probably consuming a bit more fish, and I find that people that have got higher hemochromatosis tend to be in Nordic countries and places like that, and they traditionally would have consumed more fish, those people, populations, and it would have been less of an issue because I would have got more taurine to sort the problem out. So, and because fish is slightly poorer in iron, you need to absorb more iron. So that's why you've got that genetic situation. But then when you come to an environment in the Mike, I'll spank you, mercury. Mike Doze goes, mercury, fish. I just mentioned fish. There is a thing called selenium in it, as a compound called selenide, and selenide chelates mercury. And there is a ratio. I've done a video, go and check it on mercury, and it tells you which fish to avoid and which fish you can eat, because it's got heaps, very low mercury, high levels of selenium, and the selenium chelates and helps with detoxifying mercury, and then it becomes a non-issue. So we don't worry about it in specific fish. So do go and check that video when you get a chance. So it's less of a problem. Now, getting back to, yes, well, ribs won't do it for you. Just if you've got things like hemochromatosis. Well, that's a theory that, Bob, that hemochromatosis is a consequence of bubonic plague. I'm not certain about that. That's a theory. That's a hypothesis, to be more precise. If that was the case, the levels of hemochromatosis should be much higher in the population, and they're not. So I basically don't buy it. Usually when you get downregulation of retinol of a conversion of beta carotene in populations that consumed excess something, downregulation of calcium absorption, people consuming too much dairy in the past and getting too much calcium, so that was downregulated. If you're taking in something in a greater amount, it's because your body can't get it. So you have to absorb better. And some people that have been on poorer intakes of certain nutrients tend to actually, so most of these things, and then we call it hemochromatosis, but it's just basically higher absorption of iron. And for a person that's consuming less iron-rich foods, that may be a good thing. So yeah, it's a bit more complicated. Because it doesn't gel logically. I know they say bubonic plague. I've heard of it as well, but I don't buy it. Thoughts of running. We just talked about it. What's this? Running supposedly crushes blood cells under the feet. It makes sweat. Okay. I don't think that running is going to cause, iron overload. Otherwise, if it did, it would cause it in every person. We don't see it. If you get the reverse, go ahead.
I think he's talking about using running to fix iron overload, because the idea is that somehow it would crush the blood cells.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, that's not going to do it, Bob. Oh, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I should have read the rest of it. I just go, yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Yep, running supposedly crushes blood cells under the feet and makes you sweat. That they even have the name for it. Running anemia. Okay. I didn't know that. Well, there you go. I just learned something. I didn't know about running anemia. But then again, I'm not into cardio, in marathons and stuff like that. So I just know about left ventricular hypertrophy from from things like that. Well, there you go. Thanks, Bob, for enlightening me a bit. Well, maybe it is a method, but then you can always take taurine to mitigate left ventricular hypertrophy, the growth of your left ventricular, and causing problems in your heart function. So yeah,
I'm
not option.
Not too sure about this phenomenon. By the way, I think it must be. I don't think it's running like directly causing the issue. I think it's something that maybe all the runners tend to be a little bit vegetarian adjacent, maybe plant based and stuff. And they'll so as they do lots of cardio, it upregulates red blood cell production, and that wastes their iron, and they're not getting any. I don't think running itself causes the issue. I think there's a bigger picture at play.
Okay.
Might be, I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, look, I haven't looked into it. Maybe something at some stage I'll look into it when I get a chance. Yes. Greetings as well, Lionel. And go. I've often wondered what dog's ideal diet may have the closest resemblance to our animal kingdom. Do you have any thoughts on that? There seems to be a lot of taurine research on dogs. Dogs actually a bit better than actual even animals, and a bit better than, not a lot better, just slightly, and a bit better, and definitely way better than on the taurine side compared to cats. But I would say you've got to look at the wolf, and what does a wolf eat? The wolf eats, other small animals like deer, like rabbits, like rodents. It's sort of not large animals, but sort of medium at one end and small at the other end, which are much easier to basically hunt down. Oh, you mean dogs would be similar to us? On the taurine side. Okay, is that where you're going with that? Okay. Probably. In some regards, they probably on the taurine side, they're much closer to us than cats. On that side, yeah, they'd be more similar. They can produce more than many other animals, and we're pretty good at that as well. But again, they only can do that because they eat sufficient meat, methionine rich. You still have to eat the precursors just because you can produce more. You still have to have the meat that's got the methionine and the cysteine to convert it to taurine. If you don't eat those foods, it's not gonna happen.
Yep. And
Scotty goes, wolves also like eating the French. God, he wants to upset people, old Scotty.
But I was going to say, humans need far more fat than
careful,
either dogs or
those
cats.
French, mate. Exactly, they may turn you into a sausage. God, it's pretty violent at the moment in France. If anybody's been following,
yeah,
the French are just have rebelled against Macron. It's wild out there. I mean, wild. But look, I think that every animal needs taurine, whether they need it directly in their diet, like cats definitely do need more. Their ability to synthesize taurine from methionine and cysteine is quite impaired. So they have to get it in the meat, which means they have to eat raw meat and fresh raw meat, not processed raw meat. Most of the processed raw meat that's got much less taurine, what they do is the manufacturers put taurine in for the cat food. And in the fish foods, they don't bother because fish is much higher in it anyway. And they do encourage people to buy fish for their cats. But a lot of people are too scared about the mercury stuff, even though the small fish have higher levels of selenium, and it's not an issue even for cats. They will go for the meats, and the problem is a lot of the meats, tend to have much less. The more, because those sort of meats are more focused on occasionally having it and pushing stuff, in the other direction. But anyway, yes, chicken breasts. You're not a breast man, Bob. You're not my friend if you're not a breast man. Yes, you like the thighs, do you? Yes, they've got a bit more taurine. You're a thigh man. Yes. Oh, I'm not even talking about chickens. Just to be clear on that. How are the 70% blockers? Can you tell the difference? Yeah, you can. You definitely can. Even though I can see the blue, because the blue isn't as intense as you would normally see. So if I took them off, the intensity of the blue would be much higher, putting them back on. So definitely, yeah, it's definitely a difference in that regard. Compared to my other ones, the white ones, which had a very a light yellowy tinge. They looked white, but they still had a very light yellowy tinge. The ones that are completely white, they're useless. Forget about them. They block nothing. They just crap. But the ones that are the whites ones that I had, the other ones are just very, and they say about 50%, but I wasn't sure. It probably was slightly less than that. And so I've gone for these because I tend to, I'm working in front of a computer, and since they've refurbished the building at work, every single floor now has really bright lights. Really bright lights. One of the guys, I know, actually wears a hat because he's trying to reduce the intensity of the. So the lighting has changed. In the past, it was much more pleasant. It wasn't as really intense. Now the actual the fluorescent lights, bulbs and all are very intense. The blue light is really high. It's super high. So I have to use these, which is annoying, but what can you do? It's damn annoying. Yeah, I think we covered all this with the uric acid. It's usually people, you know. Yeah, look, taurine's going to help in that regard, even after transplantation, stuff like that. But really, your uncle really needs to get off the sugar, the fructose in particular, and that's the biggest problem. Sort of the only sugar supplements that I would recommend are erythritol, xylitol, and if you can't get any of those, then stevia leaf, only leaf, because it's got a better aftertaste, the leaf part, and it seems to be less problematic compared to the other the cheaper stevia for the gut. That's why I've done a video on stevia. I'm not a big fan of stevia. Erythritol is a byproduct of fructose and glucose metabolism in the body. And when you do consume it, and these people, it's not going to make a difference because, they're going to consume it with a whole lot of carbs. It's not like us that are consuming a beverage. It hits our tongue, sends a message to our pancreas to increase insulin. With that drink that they're going to consume with erythritol, there's going to be a whole lot of carbs that are going to come through anyway. So insulin's still going to be secreted. So it makes no difference. The difference is they're not going to it's going to be less problematic for the gut microbiome. And they only absorb about 10%, 90% ends up in the bowl. And that's the nice thing about erythritol compared to all the others. And it is a naturally occurring alcohol based sweetener that the body produces as a breakdown product, which it excretes usually out of the feces or urine. So, yes. Nice one, Lukey. Oops. Let me share that. Oh, hold on. Let's see if I can get it proper on the. What is it doing? Anyway, I'll sort it out in a sec, and I'll show it. Oops. There it is. Let me just share my screen. Go away. StreamYard is so much complicated, the experience of sharing with this presentation bar. Oops. I am a hunter. I am a hunter. Yum and tasty. Nice one.
That goes for everyone in the carnivore community. That
yes, pretty.
That talks bad about there, and it's like, no, we were supposed to be hunters. Come on, guys, it's an animal food.
Exactly, and a proportion of the population actually need it because they've consumed it. They've got now genetic adaptation to it. So yes, so it's for them it's a necessity rather than just an option for 24% of the population to consume some level of dairy in their diet. They can make choices. What it can be cheeses, which ferments a lot of the sugars away and stuff like that. Doesn't have to be milk, but yes. Yes, delicious. I like the cow in the background as well. Very nice, very nice. Nothing like a cow. Anyway, now where was I? You had one up as well. Yes, just covering that point.
I think, yeah.
Yes, that's true. God, now what has it been? I've been, because remember I had cardiovascular disease and sort of I'd been on something that's now, what is it, 13 plus years, and I've probably been taking it for about a decade. So I've known about it and a lot of this information even before I had a YouTube channel. And it's funny how it's taken all this time. And the only reason it blew up is because the mass media picked up on it and started talking about it with those rat studies about, longevity, ignoring all these other wonderful things that it does in the body, What about growing new brain cells? You've got a whole lot of people out there with Alzheimer's and dementia. Yes, it seems that isn't the priority of the current system. So, yes, unfortunately. Another question made. I have been noticing some bladder issues. They are mild, but I feel there is a mild blockage when I urinate on a keto carnivore diet. Any suggestions? Could be a lot of reasons for it. It can be just a coincidence that it's actually emerged now for a whole lot of different reasons. It may have been an underlying condition before and just has not been completely resolved. But I would get it tested because bladder issues can sometimes be due to infections. There can be a lot of different reasons why urination problems, or there could also be things like in the duct that comes down. You could have crystals. There could be blocking part of the actual outlet, or at the other end as it comes down through the kidneys, and that's even more problematic. You probably would have known because you would have fit how if it was the other end, closer to the related to the kidney, the duct that comes down from the kidneys, you would have definitely noticed pain in your kidneys. But if you're not getting any pain, it's probably at the bottom end. So you may have had a kidney stone, or and it's actually caused some sort of mild blockage at the other end. That may need to be looked at by a doctor. So go and get it checked out. As people get on a carnivore diet, if they've had like kidney stones in the past from a high carbohydrate diet, high oxalate diet, from either mild oxalate dumping or just oxalate buildup in their kidneys and stuff like that, they may have issues. You need to go and see a doctor, Northeast Gold, and make sure, because we don't want, because that it could also create a bladder infection if you've got such a blockage. So go and get it checked out immediately. Do not wait. Oh, yes. So go and see a doctor immediately to get that looked at. See, allopathic doctors do have their roles in those sort of, acute situations. It's on the dietary and many other things that they've got no idea. That's where they get the propaganda from the food industry. Say this to your clients. It doesn't make sense. Say it anyway. Yes. How does deuterium work as a growth factor? Well, it's in your mitochondria, you've got in the matrix, you've got a thing called the Krebs cycle. Many people have heard about TCA cycle, the citric cycle, citric acid cycle. If that goes in reverse, it can draw in more deuterium and can be used as a growth factor to produce more lactate and upregulate a number of other growth pathways. So hormonal growth pathways. So yeah, so that's how it sort of works, is believed, the mechanism. And when you go the other way, see, excess deuterium actually acts as a growth factor. Too little deuterium acts as a catabolic factor. That's why we say stay within the sweet zone between 100 and 130 parts per million. So where does animal fats fall? Smack in the middle, 115. Unless it's grain fed, then it's 120 plus 22, around that level, a bit higher sometimes, but still within the sweet zone. And if that's all you can afford, that's fine. It's still safer than anything. Even olive oil is 130, right at the maximum end of the normal zone. You still need some for the rigidity of your collagen structures in the body, but not excessive amounts. Because when you have excessive amounts in the collagen structures, you end up like those birds that have got very strong wings, or in our case, very stiff joints. And that's where all that stiffness comes as we get older, and we've got, joints and stiffness and stuff like that. It comes from the high deuterium in the collagen structures. So, yes. And so deuterium depletion can help in that regard. Thoughts on deuterium depleted water being the strongest longevity supplement. No, wouldn't call it the longest longevity supplement at all. I call it as an intervention for people that have got high deuterium levels. Obviously, if it lowers your deuterium levels back throughout all your cellular structures back to the more normal range, you will definitely get a longevity boost, but you don't need to. Once you've lowered your levels to the normal range, then you can just get off the water, so you don't have to take it forever. So it is not a longevity supplement, because a supplement means you take it forever, like taurine, which gives you an actual reduced glycation, reduced senescence, and a whole lot of other benefits, which you can actually say would give you some sort of longevity benefits. Even though we don't have research, we can extrapolate from the mechanistic data that if you can actually lower senescence and do things like that, obviously lower senescence, we know that senescence, high senescence and high misfolded protein structures, that means deranged protein structures, tend to basically be problematic. And then on the other hand, taurine also has the ability to slow down the aging process through another mechanism, and that's called, it slows down entropy in the body. What's entropy? Anybody that understands physics knows that entropy is disorder in a system. So molecules in, let's say we're looking at a closed system, molecules that are basically not tied together and start separating and pulling apart, they become more disordered. That means lower, you have lower order and more entropy rising in a system. I'm just using that as an analogy for people to understand. So what taurine does, it manipulates water to force protein folding to happen in a certain way, maintain that folding. So it's actually got an anti-entropic effect in the system. So you could call it that it has an ability to slow down the aging process through that mechanism as well, not only dealing with glycation and many other things. So it's a Swiss Army knife of the way it can slow down the ravages of aging, so to speak. So that I would prioritize that before deuterium depleted water, let alone deuterium depleted water is very expensive. And as long as you bring your deuterium levels back to a normal range in your body, you can actually do a test. There are tests that can be done to find out your deuterium levels, and some of the hair mineral ones actually do it as well, and biopsy ones do it as well. They can actually look at the deuterium levels within your cells. So that's one way of finding out. And once you've brought it back to the normal range, you just use animal fats to produce metabolic water. So what do you think the whole system is? You strip off the from the carbon backbone of any food or whatever it is, carbohydrates, fat. You strip off even proteins if you're desperate. If your body's desperate, run out of everything else, and pretty much that carbon backbone can be used as structural material. What is not used will basically be combined with oxygen, and you'll breathe it out as carbon dioxide. So that's how. So the fundamental level, you're taking in protons and electrons, and you're using those to power the redox system. Obviously, if you're using some of those as an antioxidant, because that's what electrons are, it's an electron donor, an antioxidant. So if you're using some of those, that means your redox potential can drop. That means the ability to pump more protons through to run the nanomotor, because the higher the protein gradient in those folds, the higher the speed, the RPM of the ATPase, which can produce more ATP energy. The less you can produce. So there's, depending on the amount of nanomotors and depending on the amount of, redox potential, which is pretty much through those complexes, you're basically just passing. Redox potential means, the NAD sort of FAD. It's really just handing over electrons through the electron chain between the complexes to power it up, so those pumps can pump through the protons. Very elegant system. Bart's explained the energetics beyond that. I'll use a very simplistic term of Bart's stuff. He could actually make it a hell of a lot simpler for people, but he doesn't. So yes, we'll call him Jack Cruz from now on. I'm just joking.
Oh God!
I'm joking, Mr. Serpanos. How dare you say that? I'll get Ted to sort you out with those frogs. Oops, I'm concerned about tonight. So, but there's, he talks about the 3 cog system in that regard. So if you've got ATP here from the mitochondria, you've got that phosphocreatine, and then you've got the other part around the filaments that are actually taking the glycogen and turning it, using that energy to turn it into glucose to use it for the filaments, for those contractile that happen. And your nervous system tells the muscle which fibers to fire depending on what physical activity you're doing. Different fibers will fire within that muscle itself. But the actual, that middle cog, that phosphocreatine, what is it doing? It's moving a phosphate from here. Once that ATP is produced at this end, the filaments, it releases a phosphate. That phosphate will be taken back and given to the other side, to the mitochondria side, and you going back and so it's an elegant system. So that's where that middle part, the phosphocreatine, is playing that middle, you could say, hand over the phosphate, so to speak, between the two, in a sense. So that's why he talks about this 3-gear system is really the thing that actually, makes it. I wish he did it less biochemistry wise. I used to do it as well, my early videos. I've stopped doing it. I want people to understand in plain English how these things work.
Yeah, it's easy to delve into the biochemistry, especially for me as well. But sometimes it's good to practice, like how you can communicate this to a wider audience.
Precisely. Yeah. We have to simplify it. We have to use plain English terminology, or just stuff that people can understand, because biochemistry is fine as an interest for me, for Bart as an academic and all that. And he, if he's talking to other academics, he'll use that terminology because they will respect him for using the correct terminology and nomenclature. Like me in my field, I have to use the right nomenclature and terminology, and I'll use certain things. If somebody is from elsewhere, hears us speaking about certain and using acronyms and whatever, they go, "What the hell are they? What is that gibberish?" Some of the stuff, sometimes we get into conversations in mapping about things and we're using a whole lot of terminologies, and people are going, it goes over their head, obviously. But that's for us, using the terminology so we can quickly explain something or discuss something without having to say too many things. And it's useful, in that regard. But when you're trying to explain it to people out there, I've more and more got away from trying to simplify the message as much as possible for people to understand. At the end of the day, they just want to know how things work in plain English. They don't need to, they're not, most of people is never going to go and qualify as a biochemist or physiologist or, do biophysics or whatever else. Obviously, he does a better job than most people in simplifying and explaining it. I know some people criticize me for not showing too many images. I just find that showing too many images sometimes just overcomplicates things for a lot of people. I will do some videos where I'll show the sources of my information, like the studies, and say, this is what I'm basing my opinions on, what I'm saying. But at the same time, it's in one ear, out the other ear for most people. And it's only the nerdy types that will want to go through the study and really check it thoroughly and all that, and then come back with comments and ask additional things. But the majority of people just want to know what works. And yeah. Can't imagine anything wanting to insert Ted. Richard, will you shave first? I hope. I'll get my little Tassie devil on him, rip him to pieces. You gotta have some sort of protection when it comes to Ted. Gotta know that. It's dangerous. I'm scared of him. I suspect my uncle's getting oxalate issues. Yeah, he had terrible headaches, feeling cold, light poo. Light coloured poo is a giveaway. That definitely is, can be an issue. Also, light coloured poo can also be a gallbladder issue as well. And sometimes these two go hand in hand. You get worse gallbladder issues because you're overusing B6. You're overusing, the oxalates will tend to burn through sulfurs, tend to burn through B6, tend to, even because they're taxing the methylation cycle, so they'll burn through choline as well. So they tend to have this, and choline is really essential together with taurine for proper bile production and function, emulsification, all that. And so, yeah, if that doesn't happen, and also choline can actually reduce the amount of cholesterol that goes into the bile, so you get a better bile salts that actually, so you don't end up with sludge or cholesterol stones type things. So again, it's, the body actually excretes all these things, and it uses the body to excrete excess minerals and stuff like that. It's supposed to do. Our problem is that we have been we're feeding the body different things, and when you're eating a whole lot of plants all the time, your gallbladder is not excreting much, but it still needs to, because remember, 85% of your cholesterol is produced in your liver. Well, it still needs to be excreted with that bile, but small amounts, but it can build up. Well, why does it build up? Well, because you're basically eating a whole lot of plants and never excreting the damn thing out of the gallbladder. So all these things complicate things when you're not on a species appropriate diet. The body doesn't want to use a lot of energy to do things, but it never realized that the human species would be so stupid to get off its species appropriate diet and end up creating these complications. Evolution doesn't work that fast to change these and adapt and sort these things out. So yes. So yeah. So it will be an issue potentially for him. He has to persevere and stuff like that. Hopefully I can get in the next week or two, I can get that gut video out as well, the comprehensive one, and my fasting one, a new type of way of fasting to improve the autophagy process inside. So yeah, that will be an interesting way of doing it. It's a combination of, one person only has actually seen the research that I've actually shown that person, llama, but he's told that I will shoot that animal if he mutters a word, because it's a combination of some research out of an academic from the US and an academic from Germany, and I've sort of combined the two in my head and come up with a solution. So, and I've come up with the solution also it not only helps improve autophagy, but it also helps clear out viruses, bacteria, and spike proteins inside the cell. So it'll actually help on that front as well. Break that stuff down and eliminate it much easier with fasting. So improve getting rid of those nasties out of our system. So yeah, that's going to be a very different way of actually fasting that I suspect will become very popular in the long run. Especially with the type of environment we live in nowadays. So that'll be helpful. There's a couple of other insights that I've come up why the birth rates are low and what's causing that. So through 3 or 4 different sources, I've worked it out in my head exactly what's causing it. So people know that it's, there was a recent research showing a marked reduction in the birth rates in Switzerland since post-COVID period and all that, and it hasn't really recovered much. And people are talking about it, but they don't know why. Going back to old research, I remembered some old research that I'd looked in neonatal, early childhood, and then I go, oh, it's so friggin' obvious. I'm not going to say anything yet until I do the video, but yeah, I was able to sort of through a bit of lateral thinking, sort of combine all this sort of together and go, that's the reason why it's causing shit. And most people are completely unaware of it.
I'm hyped.
Anyway, yes, sort of. And without this sort of stuff, you actually get more things like miscarriages and stuff like that. Less ability, because it's a requirement. It actually increases in the body. So it's and it's not what most people think, because a lot of things that do increase. It's none of that sort of things. So it's going to be out of left field for most people. So yes, more deep dives. As I said, I don't look at the surface stuff, people. I go much deeper and try and understand how bloody things work. Anyway, why do people with insulin resistance, which is a construct, it's the Randall cycle, have high triglycerides in their blood? Obviously, because I thought eating sugar, carbs will spike blood sugar. Not necessarily. Sugar and carbs may or may not. If you're on a low-fat diet and you're consuming 4 to 5% of your intake is coming from protein, 2 to 3 is coming from fat, and well over 90% is coming from carbs, you will still have an insulin to glucagon of 4.4 to 1, and you will have a much lower level of insulin secretion, and you will have upregulation of AMPK and a lot of the other pathways you get. This is what you get in a vegan diet, sort of fasting mimicking diet. You actually get, or a potato diet, which is you'll get 4 to 1 on a pure glucose diet of insulin to glucagon. Combining junk food, high fat, high sugar from seed oils and all that, you can get an insulin to glucagon of 70 to 1. That's how high. That is very high Randall cycle activation, and that is the construct of insulin resistance. That's all it is. As Mr. K would say, you can't measure it. There's no device, because obviously it's only high signaling. You can only measure insulin in the bloodstream, but the intensity of the signal going, get this out of the bloodstream, is what it's saying. If it could speak, if insulin could speak, it's high amplification of insulin due to the Randall cycle. Barkay's done a video on that. The simple term is you've got 2 doors, the GLUT4 that requires insulin to force things through, and at a basal level, when you're in a low carb state, you're using GLUT1, which doesn't require insulin from a basal level. But when you've got elevated insulin, it will signal to push it through GLUT4. And then you've got CD36, which is the fat one. Just think of them as doors. These doors, things are flowing through. And you've got bouncers there, which is those up. As citrate increases, you get more bouncers at the door trying to hold people out. And eventually they close those doors completely, pushing people out. So think of that, and think of the Krebs cycle as the Ferris wheel. Ferris wheel going around. You can only get so many people on the damn Ferris wheel to basically then strip off all the stuff, breathe out the carbon dioxide, and provide the mitochondria with the protons and with the hydrogen ions, which then the complexes will strip out the protons and the electrons to basically power the system and to provide the stuff for the nanomotor to produce ATP. So really that's that part. So we need to be very careful about what is insulin resistance. It's a construct. It doesn't exist as anything that you can measure. At most, you can say it's because of the Randall cycle. It's an over amplification of insulin signaling, telling the body, get rid of this stuff. If you can't put it in the cells because the receptor sites are down-regulated because there's too much energy in the system, then push it back to the liver, export it out as triglycerides, and then stick it in the fat cells. and then you become fattier and fattier over time by doing that. So you have to have both high sugar, high fat at the same time for Randall cycle activation and to have very high triglycerides. Now, excess sugar will also engage at a much lower gradient, the Randall cycle, at a much lower gradient, but you have to have a lot of excess sugar to be able to do that. Even the vegans struggle on a traditional vegan diet to do that. That's why we call it the Church of Anorexia Vegana. But it's usually people on a sad vegan diet. They are the ones that get fat because they put a lot of seed oils. That's where it happens from. But triglycerides can actually go up either from excess sugar and Randall cycle state, where you've got just too many energy substrates that pushed all back to the liver to be reprocessed, be exported out as VLDL. And then that excess amount, if it can't find a home in cells around the body, gets deposited in the fat cells. On the other hand, in the actual system, if you're, let's say, athletic and do a lot of exercise, right after doing a lot of exercise, if they would take a measurement of your blood, they'd find higher levels of triglycerides in your system, high VLDL, because the system, and slightly above basal levels of sugar as well. Not to the level that insulin would be hit when it'd be activated, but enough to basically support the brain and the red blood cells and other parts of the body, just above basal level. And that's why with exercise, your blood sugar raises a bit even on a carnivore diet. And definitely the triglycerides go up as well. Again, because the body is anticipating, doesn't know how much exercise you're going to do, just puts a bit more out. And like the dawn effect in the morning, the same thing happens. Whether you use it or not, if you don't, it will circulate and get deposited back in the fat cells, be dropped off, So what doesn't get used gets dropped off and stored. But the difference is because you're in a lower insulin state, in the hours that you're not eating, you're going to be using the fat stores. So that's how we were able to maintain weight stability over time. Anyway. Okay.
Harry, I think I'll get going.
And my dad always. That's okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's past midnight, so yeah. Nice to be here once again.
Chat with you after and all that, but it's a bit.
Well, you plan on going for like half an hour or so?
I said, I'd like to have you on, but today, because there's there's a lot of questions people want to answer because they're not going to see me for another fortnight. So it's taxing my time. So I would have wanted to
let me just stay for like 20 minutes
what's
more.
happening in Brazil. Could you actually just tell me about 5 minutes, just tell me about what's happening in Brazil? I've been hearing a lot of things.
Oh, so here are a few interesting things. Yeah, you might have heard that it was a while back that we got those restrictions on Telegram and everything, and there have been law proposals about restricting internet and censoring comments and news and things of this sort. But what's got people in uproar recently is that our former president, so Jair Bolsonaro, has been judged as non-electable anymore, so he can't run another time. And it's basically, look, people can say all they want. That has nothing to do with anything he did. It's basically that the current regime is against him, and so they made up whatever they wanted to condemn him. So and it's come to that point, and
wasn't De Silva the current leader? Wasn't he charged with something in the past with corruption?
Yes, he was charged. He was actually imprisoned.
He was actually charged with
charges.
Corruption.
They dropped the charges against him. No, it's unbelievable.
What a joke.
Many people said that, and they even so Supreme Court was actually going after people for hate speech if they said something along the lines of "we're being governed by a thief," which is just truth. So yeah,
Bloody
it's
hell, that's
insane. Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
That's pretty bad.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that
But
is pretty crazy. Yeah, a bit around the world, a lot of things been happening and all that. I've got a few videos that cover a few issues shortly as well. Um, one will be on Wagner to really explain the backstory.
yes.
The backstory is there's a big pile of money called about $500 billion, which the elites of Russia are squabbling over. That's the real story about the Wagner Group. All the other stuff is just nonsense, the normal crap that the most of the media. So you'll get a bit of a. Most people don't know Prigozhin was basically, he's not even a military leader. He was basically a businessman who had a whole lot of a franchise of restaurants. A restaurant franchisee is what he is. It'd be like McDonald's running a mercenary army. You know, the person who set up McDonald's, something like that. But he got close to Putin, very good friend, and he liked his management style. And he basically manages the money. Okay,
Mhm.
so you understand the intrigue. There's a lot of
Okay.
things here, and he was being cut out of the business, so to speak. So it's more complicated than people realize. You know, so it's not what you hear everybody else out there talking about. Yeah, he did violate some rules and laws and stuff like that. Yep. But even Putin, under the constitution, you can't have actually paramilitary groups set up by the government. That's why he actually set it up as a business rather than
Okay.
a government paramilitary organization or mercenary. You can't. So yeah, so they had to get around the law that way. Just look at their footprint in South America, their footprint Wagner Group in two places in South America, a whole lot of places in Africa, some places now they're expanding into Southeast Asia. So yes, it's a very interesting network. But they're not only doing it; the elites who or our future feudal lords from the West, what they will be doing is they've got their own private armies as well, a bit like in the feudal days. So everybody's into it. So just a lot of people need to take a chill pill and realize that it's a far more complicated picture. And yeah, when you look at that sort of stuff, I mean, the Americans in the Second World War, there were certain people that were trading with the enemy, business people, and even certain countries that were getting resources through Lend-Lease. And basically, people just doing blind eyes because business is business, as they say, follow the money. And then you understand what is happening in a lot of these things. So it's at the end of the day, I always remind people it's not a conspiracy. It's just what elites since the pharaohs have been doing for a very long time. You know, people just are not aware of this, how it all works. So there has to be a bit of a video on that. There's going to be a bit of a video on the reason why the elites are doing what they're doing in the West, depopulation, all these sort of things. They're doing something. Remember years ago, I actually talked about the Japanese, the way they're actually doing an intergenerational transfer of wealth
Mm. Yes, yes.
over time with their central bank. Remember I talked about that ages ago?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I've figured out is that every single central bank in the West is doing the same thing, but slightly different.
Okay.
That's why I missed it. And then when I looked into it, I did a bit of research into the bond market and all this, I realized, oh shit, they're all doing it. And then it made sense why they have to do what they do, the depopulation. Everything makes sense. Not a conspiracy. It's actually good economics for them to survive because the
Okay.
actual 2008 crash was our 1929 crash, but they found a very nefarious way of avoiding it. And what they're doing is they are slowly, like the Japanese, which now are what they used to be back then, 244% of GDP. Now they are 260+% of GDP. And what is the ECB and what is basically the our colourful friends at the Fed doing? They're also doing the same thing. Like the Japanese central bank, they're buying up everything that nobody else wants to hold. Same thing. They're doing all the same thing for the same reasons. And that's why the Japanese don't like immigration, because that goes against their policy. Their population is voluntarily basically aging themselves and reducing. Perfect. They just have to fix the productivity side. Anyway, I'll explain that in a video, and it'll actually all make sense why and all that. And which areas to invest and which areas to avoid completely.
Okay.
For these whole reasons. So it's a very interesting story. Oh, anyway, the world. Such an interesting place.
No. It got me hyped, not only for nutritional content now.
Yeah, so I'm definitely holding out until I make the videos, obviously, because I've had to do big deep dives, and I don't want to basically just hand it on a platter to other people that have done no effort, put no effort into it to understand what's happening. Yes, we've still got competitors in the YouTubia world, as you know. I had no idea that you had a YouTube channel. Ah, yes. Where have you been living? Under a rock? And what is he actually saying? You were recommended by Jonathan. Yeah, I found you on YouTube. Yep. Yeah. That was nice of Jonathan. Yep, that's right. Because I've actually done a thing with Jonathan as well. Yeah, composition consultant. Very nice. Actually, I think Jonathan's one of the nicest people that I've actually found. Genuine gentleman. And I mean it completely honest, as a true gentleman on the interwebs. He's a better, nicer person than even me or anyone else that I know. So that's saying a lot about him. He's a really good gentleman. He's strong. He's not some weak soy boy or anything like that. But you don't have to be. You can be a strong masculine male without being an arsehole. I tend to have a bit of an arsehole personality, but anyway, I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. I am better than what I used to be. I think I had the same experience that Andrew Tate had. He got in prison and became a better person recently. And he's mellowed. He's much nicer and more pleasant than what he used to be. And I think my cardiovascular disease made me more nicer and more pleasant as well. To care about others who suffer like me. You have to sort of suffer a bit to feel for others. Yes. So it does help. Just God, not too much suffering. I've had enough. There is a limit. Oh, strict time. Missing the super chat option. I am just not seeing it. Oh, well, shit happens. There's a super thanks or whatever you can actually do against any video. If you can't do it, you can't do it. It's usually people that basically do super chat me or whatever. It's to say thank you and stuff like that. But I don't do it for the money. In that regard, I do have a day job. Others don't and do require it far more than me. But it is nice just to have a thank you for a coffee or whatever. Hard Logic, how are you, mate? Yeah, it's a sort of an interesting situation, Lukey, and what's been. I mean, because you're on Discord, and we have put up the Discord before up there, and also Lukey has put up the thumbs up, folks. Yes, and Hello Kitty's here. You took your time. What are you doing? Cleaning your bathroom again. Time to do eye check. My neighbour. God, condescending women. Anyway, story of my life. So yes, where was I? See what you did? Oh, you went for a walk. Oh, so I'm not that important. Is that what you're saying? Yes, but it's what's been happening in the carnivore space that you've been, recently, because I've been out of it for about even though I've been putting up stuff, I've technically been out of it for, what is it now, for a month or so, really. My mind's not straight at the moment with everything happening.
No, yeah,
So what's the big controversies on the...
I've honestly been away a bit of myself for the past few months or so, but I have been seeing a few things here and there. But for some reason, I've been seeing that there's been a lot of talk about paleomedicine, especially because Judy Cho started posting, like she was disagreeing with Dr. Sophia, from paleomedicine, because Dr. Sophia was basically saying that the whole
I know her.
The what is it, the SEARS, so the toxic mold syndrome is made up, it doesn't exist, and you can just fix everything with diet. And Judy doesn't agree with that. And that was sparking up a few debates, and I saw many people saying that they had negative experiences with paleomedicine protocol. So there was that. And there was also some hassle around, people eating lots of butter, as is usual. That this topic comes and goes, and people will be like, no, eating lots of butter will make you gain weight, or you can lose weight eating butter. And it's like,
it's a bit weird. It is a bit weird, how things just seem to cycle through. Dairy hostile, then people become more accepting of dairy, then hostile again, and things like that. Paleomedicine have got some interesting views on things like mold and stuff like that. I mean, there is quite clear, good research on mold toxicity and all that.
Yep.
And some people who have got genetic or some limitations in terms of methylation can basically bioaccumulate more mold into their system. So, and sometimes also some certain bacteria can actually interfere in the ability to get rid of sort of these sort of things, and you recycle a lot of toxins back into the system, some people, and all that. And then calcium D, what is it called? Glutate or something like that it's called. What it does is it actually, I've had people put on the supplement, what it does is it actually prevents that recycling. Because it depends on the gut microbiome. Some people do, some people don't. Gluconate, that's it. So that helps with eliminating and preventing that recycling from happening. That doesn't happen to everyone. No, not everyone needs that. It's usually people that have gone and done blood tests, and they've seen that even though they're doing all these proper things, improving their sort of detox system, they're not getting the results, and it's usually sort of reabsorption in the colon that's happening due to certain bacterial strains that are causing it. So that's other issues. And I think some people that have actually gone down the paleomedicine or have sort of either come back to me or probably gone to other people and have told me about it, and I've said no, and I've put them on to what supplements and what to do, and they've resolved their problem. So that's That's why I'm trying to get more of these damn videos out. It's just really hard when you work and the limited time, because there's just too much information in my head, but not enough in videos to, even though I've got 500 now, and something well over 500 videos. There's so many things I haven't covered that are still in my bloody head that need to get on into a video. So, God, oh well. We've got plenty of years to go.
That's it.
Hopefully people are patient. There's just too many subject matters, and I have, and obviously I never intended my channel to be pure nutrition. That's why I called it No BS, so no bullshit, giving you the real story, the real take, whether it's on the nutritional side or some of the geopolitics or other things like that. I have probably ventured more into that than in the past, but I think these are important things because the current politics that are being played out in the world affect us on multiple levels as humans, not only in the dietary side. Veganism is not pushed accidentally. There's an agenda behind it, to lower the population, the reproduction, sort of the things like the damn, the C19 and the jab. All those have affect reproduction as well, and I'll cover that in a video that I'll be doing shortly. And so, they've been experimenting with coronas all the way back in the 60s. So this is all publicly available, or it's not conspiratorial. It's out there and all that, and they've been playing around, and there's been a whole lot of scandals in relation to this, also relating to Pfizer and all that, and it was just covered up, or basically they got a slap on the wrist and a small fine and stuff like that. And we've had backflips continuously on gain of function BA research, which should be banned completely. It has no benefit to humanity, just to people who want to weaponize things. And no wonder the Bill Gates and Melinda, funder actually funds some of these organizations like Eco Health Alliance. So does the CIA through Black Projects. So does DARPA and a lot of others. So when you look at all that sort of stuff, you go, well, these people are not. That's why I call Fauci, the bioweapons czar, because that's what he bloody was, So his whole supporting these gain of function things around the world are just outrageous. They should have never been permitted. And that this guy's been able to walk away very comfortable. If you take a look at a lot of these people, you look at their wealth, on a public salary, how do they accumulate so much wealth, all these politicians, all these people? They got a lot of kickbacks from certain interest groups. That's where they got the money from, and inside information. But that's the corruption level in the system. But that's nothing new. It's been happening since the pharaohs. They've been looking after some of their mates and giving them special additional land and holdings and stuff like that, as long as they serve them well. So this is not new. Been happening for a very long time. It's just people don't realise it. That's the only reason. And the media never tell them about it. Keep quiet about it, even though a lot of them know about it. The selective of the truth. So, China's got a one-party system. We've got a two-party system, but it's really the same thing. Doesn't really matter. We just have basically, you're given two main options, and they're both the same.
Yep.
Because what the wealth classes did a very, very long time ago what they did was they separated politics from economics. That's how, because when you separate the two, you control the economic part, not the politicians, and then from the economics you can actually dictate the political direction and punish politicians if they don't do what you tell them to do. They can withdraw capital from your economy and collapse it if they want to. They've done it around the world many times. Or they can use money to pay people to do coups or whatever. It's been happening for a very long time. It's nothing new in that regard, nothing conspiratorial about it. I mean, in many cases, actually just written in openly years later, we find out about it. So it's just people who are unaware of it. And most people have a short cycle. They've got their own lives and many things, and they just move from one cycle to another in that regard. What I try to do on my channel is beyond the nutritional side and giving them good nutritional advice of how really the body works and how you can biohack and fix things and how really fundamentally and simple and make it simple for people to understand. That's critical. It's a waste of time making it too complicated. You know, I'm not interested in showing off. I think people know that I'm quite an intelligent man. I don't need to prove that to anyone. And if they don't, that's their bad luck. I just need to basically present it in a way that it is consumable, people can understand. Because fundamentally, otherwise, I'm wasting my time. I might as well be talking to myself. You know, that's what it is. So what I'm trying to do with more of my channel now is diversify in some of the other areas that affect people's lives and to give them a bit of an understanding how they're being bullshitted about a lot of things. It's not only the food, it's the other politics and a lot of other agendas that it's happening. So, you know, so hopefully some of this divergence into other areas. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize what's happening in their schools, what their kids are being taught.
Right.
And it's out there, you know, so I'm trying to bring people awareness because if they want to stop it, the only way they're going to stop it and prevent this, you know, attack against, you know, our traditional moral values that we've had, our religious values and other things, they're not going to do it by basically leaving these people to do whatever they like with your kids. So, you know, so I mean, it's outrageous what is happening. And so I think that is really an important thing as well. Some people may not agree with me. That's their problem. Fine, I don't care. I think these are important things because we're not just food. We are,
absolutely,
you know, citizens of a society, and we're affected by many aspects of that society. You know, so that's why I've sort of diversified a bit in recent times because even though I do like the nutritional side, and I've covered a lot of things, I've made shitloads of videos on the nutritional side or on things like health issues and stuff like that. I mean, most of the videos are related to that. But I think that I've neglected some of the other stuff that's also important to me. And so I think more and more of my subscribers are appreciating that. Some may not to the same degree. That's fair enough. I understand. I'm not being critical of people in that regard, but I think it's still important that people are exposed to things and hopefully they start thinking about these things. But when you give them a more complete picture, they can then see the obvious bullshit that they've been presented from the mass media. And that's really important because there's too much of it out there at the moment. And people are so confused about too many things.
Definitely. Lots of confusion going around.
Yes, I'll just bring that up. That's...
I think I'll get going here. I'm about to. My eyelids are heavy. Basically.
You better look. I'm about to pull the plug anyway because I have to get over to Dad's shortly. About so I can cook a meal. I told him I'm going to be a bit late today, so he knows. So he's got a bit of a snack, and then I will basically in a few minutes as well go. So I'm going to actually pull the plug now because until I get ready to put trousers on, it'll be 2:00, and then I'll have to walk over. It'll be just a bit after 2, so it'll be enough time. Look, thanks, guys. If I haven't answered your question, just put a comment and I will answer it out there. Yep. you can see me in a fortnight's time, and if the best things you can do for your parents, because they're probably under eating protein, under eating a lot of things, and all that is probably is to get taurine and leucine into them. But make sure you check the video under the taurine playlist, because there is one about medications and stuff like that. So you need to take that into consideration. The other part that I haven't covered in that video is if they're on metformin, taurine lowers blood sugar. We don't want hypoglycemia in these people. So you may have to start low and get them off metformin, because metformin has other problems in itself. It basically causes a lot of deficiencies. B12 deficiency, B3 deficiency, B1 deficiency. It's problematic. So people, and it also can create other health complications in the long run. So if we're going to be 3 supplements, one would be winter vitamin D, 5,000 IUs, depending which latitude you are. And the other 2, because most of these people are going to be more indoors nowadays, so you may need for more months in the year, depending on how much they get out and stuff like that. Maybe in summer you can give it a miss so they can sort of normalize their levels to slightly down, so you're not building up continuously, because you don't know if they're not getting a virus or whatever, not using it, they're storing it continuously. So that's the other part of the thing. It's not like the stuff you get from the sun that's a water soluble form of vitamin D sulfate, and you piss that out any excess, even if you get up to 20,000 IUs from the sun, being outdoors all day. So it's not the same. So vitamin D, only 5,000 IUs in the months that solar radiation is low. Taurine and leucine to help with protein synthesis and help with stronger muscles and stronger bones into old age. They are critical for people to basically have healthier, long life. And the obvious stuff is get the seed oils out. That's a non-negotiable thing. If you don't get the seed oils out, you're not going to have longevity. Forget it. You've got to get the seed oils out of the diet. And most of the refined sugars in particular, even though glucose is a problem, it's high glucose can be a problem. The high fructose is the biggest problem. So if I was going to prioritize things, I'd try and get those. If they want to eat some tubers and some pumpkin and some potatoes here or there, that's going to be less problematic compared to the fructose foods. You can't make it 100% for them, because a lot of the current generation are just too pig-headed and not willing to change. Anyway, I'll let you say goodbye.
Yeah, so that's it, everyone. I hope you
I'm
can
going to do the same. Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah. Goodbye, everyone, and keep taking care of yourselves,
Go ahead.
your
Sorry
family and friends, and keep fighting the good fight. That's it.
Precisely. And goodbye from me. I'll see you in a fortnight. Between now and then, there'll be a few videos that I'll put up. So expect something to be on the interwebs. There'll be some of the non-me videos. They'll continue putting them up. There's all sorts of subject matters that come up, and I do like to post those that YouTube won't allow, but I do it in such a way where cunning way, and I get around their little restrictions. So I've worked a little system out for myself to basically allow me to push. Sometimes they will put limitations on the monetization or restrict it completely, and then I just remove it, because I know it's not going to, it could affect my channel. So I usually play and see how far are they going to, is the AI going to allow me or not. So it's me trying to outdo the AI, the Google AI. It's fun, but at least I get some content out there about some controversial issues that most people are not aware of, and people need to become aware of these things. The recent one I think was a really interesting one is how these globalists think. They see us as, 100 years, no Homo sapiens on this planet.
Yep.
You know, they actually believe this. So what do you think they're actually doing to actually make it happen? They're telling you. You just most people don't want to listen, don't want to hear it. And remember, these people, I mean, who are behind the World Economic Forum? BlackRock, Vanguard. They own most of the world economy. BlackRock it may be $14 trillion as a company, but it manages something like well over 53 trillion, bigger than the US economy, nearly double the US economy. They're buying everything up. Thanks to this new model that I'll discuss, why they are, it'll decimate all the actual middle class, and you'll end up with these big conglomerates, a bit like Japan has, big conglomerates, and most of the smaller entities are being sort of sucked up by these big monstrosities, these zombie companies that are basically backed, and zombie governments that are backed by, there are these secret agreements with the central banks. But anyway, we'll go into that in a future video. And that's what's happening around the world. And that's what I'm trying to bring to your attention, to realize what is happening and how to protect your families. Because the diet side is important, but the financial side, if you're on the street, not going to really help you, is it? So you need to be aware of what's coming and how things are playing out. Really, things are playing out, not all the sort of the conspiratorial stuff. That's just, most of it's nonsense. Some of it has some truths, half truths, but not the real stuff. And the other side of things is just propaganda. So anyway, it's been nice, being able to answer some people's questions after about a month, interacting with a number of people and getting into it. Now, I may next Saturday have, in the evening, for the European crowd, I may have some sort of geopolitical thing. It'll only be geopolitics. So if I do have enough time and I'm not doing anything, I may do something like that, which will be like a controversy corner on, some of the stuff, if I get those videos out. So if I get those videos out this week, then we'll have something to discuss, and where people can ask more questions, in-depth background stuff, and go a bit deeper into the stuff. So that's the plan. Let's see how it works out. Not promising anything at this stage. Anyway, see you, everyone.